and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League. Friday afternoon end, or tail end, of Week 9 is right around the corner. And joining me on the desk to break down this game is going to be Anatoly Alexeynok. And it's going to be a big one today. SK up against Dignitas. Totally, both of these teams yesterday suffering defeats.
They did suffer defeats, as we saw a great victory from Renegades, qualifying now towards Hi-Res Expo, and both of these teams needing to find a lot of victories to do the same.
As I look at the standings there, you can see now that a little star indicates that they've qualified for Hi-Res Expo directly, and Renegades just joined that list today. Splice and SK are the two teams vying for that spot now, but SK Gaming, a big game today up against Dignitas to keep them in the running. If they lose here, Splice will take the spot away and lock themselves in. And that's why I brought up yesterday's performances, because both these teams lost. Dignitas will not be happy coming in today after taking that loss to Obey.
Definitely not. They were thrown off guard from what I could tell based off of their Twitter feeds about the starts coming through from not only Weekend but Mineral as well. But SK Gaming staggered a little bit against Splice, a very unpredictable team with how they were playing. SK, though, they practiced a lot with the Persephone. They showed its power with Paul, as they got a lot of respect bans, but Dignitas did the same, so I wouldn't be surprised to see if the second pick team bans Persephone.
I think we will see that because both teams have, like you said, drafted Persephone before. Horrywin played it for Dignitas in one game, and he showed how good he can be on that god. And then you've got Paul across the way, or multiple members. Persephone will be a one-ban wonder. Let's just put it that way. There's plenty more to focus on here. This is Zap yesterday up against Splice and his performance on the Jingwei. He led from the front a lot of the time in that Jingwei.
He really did, honestly. Having to face off against Anubis, I'm sure, was uncommon for Zaman, but that's something that Splice and Cyclone Spin bring against Ataraxia or Whirlwind. Could be assassin play. We've seen sets, we've seen Susanos out of Whirlwind. We'll see how Dignitas adapt today.
Now, the one thing I do know about both these teams as well, Tolly, is that the early game, they both like to fight and scrap if they can. If they can find a window to have a good little fight, Dignitas are more than happy to go at it with their core of Trick, Sank, and Cuvo Fred, alongside either Horrywin or Ataraxia, whichever position they play today. But the same can be said for Sam Pasaka here and Paul alongside it.
It's going to come down to the jungler's presence, and there needs to be a Sanford Soccer special in the long lane gank to get Zaman ahead. This is going to be a very important matchup in this long lane.
Starting to ramp up his SK Gaming. Meanwhile, Dignitas, the other team, their opposition here today, a lackluster performance from them yesterday. They won't be satisfied with how Obey played, or how they played against Obey, but they did give credit to Obey, as you mentioned. This time, though, another test for them. They have qualified for the World Championships, but seeding is still important overall. Depending where you seed, there's a chance you'll get an easier round opponent if you're first or second in the league. But yesterday, because of that loss, they dropped out of being the top two.
Ooh, that's unfortunate for them, but they can still at least qualify to being in the third spot at least. This is a nice play from Whirlwind here, just surviving for long enough and then using the passive after resurrecting.
Yep, and turn around the kills again. But this is a look at what Persephone can bring to the battle a little bit more so. Horrywin had a very good performance on it, and that was that first game where Dignitas did run away with it against Obey.
That's right.
But after that, things started to get a little bit trickier to deal with.
It was an 18-minute game, number one, really punishing Obey Alliance for their mistakes. If SK was watching that game, they need to make sure that they don't overextend trying to kill Whirlwind. That ultimate is so much range.
Toxic is what it should be said. Horrywin played that well. Yesterday, though, for the first time, we saw Dignitas switching back their mid and duo laners.
Yes.
For the whole of Phase 2, Ataraxia had played in the mid lane, Horrywin in the duo lane. Yesterday, in that Obey set, when they started to struggle, they switched it back, but it still didn't help them.
Well, they also were playing different picks, where they got an Isis, I believe. They got the Merlin, and that's why they wanted to run it into that mid lane, because you want that kind of mage synergy, as Dignitas needs to find ways to secure wins, because if they're running Whirlwind in the long lane and it's not working against Obey, then it's probably not going to work against other teams.
Also, they did run that Oleron in the mid lane, which didn't really work out too well from lack of pressure from an Oleron in the early game. Did come back to haunt them a little bit. That man on your screen, though, Variety, seemed to be quite consistent in those games. He made a lot of early rotations as the series went on when his team started to struggle elsewhere, foregoing farm and the solo lane aspects, but trying to influence the team fights to help support his team. I think he was the only real member of the team that didn't really have an issue yesterday.
No, definitely not, especially when you're getting your comfortable King Arthur, playing it 11 games out of 25 total from Dignitas. He's very comfortable on that god, and then even spicing things up with the Achilles and the Tier.
And the Tier 2. Still sticking with the Warriors, though. Not too many Guardians to speak of. Let's see how picks and bans go this time round. SK will be the first team to do the banning, and that means that Dig will probably be the ones having to ban that Persephone and probably Set.
Unless they can figure out a way to deal with one of those two gods and get the other for themselves, because Dignitas prefer those gods as well. So this could be a very different set of picks and bans. A lot of mind games, I think, between these two teams.
When you talk about mind games, the meta is slowly shifting in the Pro League over time. We started with a lot of focus towards giving the dual laner all the farm. As this season's continuing to go on, though, we're starting to see a bit more of each team adapting a different strategy, more focus on maybe giving the mid laner the farm instead. I wonder how these two teams will fare with these changes.
Well, I can almost predict that Nilma will be looking for that level 1 invade. We saw that yesterday against Splice's Aurora, where both the supports were just kind of following the junglers or boxing against each other. As already SK Gaming thinking about how they want to throw away bans. Thor could be first picked, also a good ban as well.
And when you talk about throwaway bans from SK, I mean, the pressure's really on Dig, and that allows SK to go, this is our first pick, more than anything else. So
Yep.
the Thor means they're not going to want to take it from themselves. We won't see Sam on that one. They're going to instantly start up with the Isis, however.
I'm expecting Dignitas to follow that ban with the Set and the Persephone. SK Gaming, not sure where their first pick is going to be. Could also be the Hercules support coming through from Neil Ma, as that was a highly contested pick between him versus Aurora.
And Trixtank.
Yeah, the Hercules on Trixtank, as well as another interesting one. I know Jormungandr is preferred from Belair, but I guess the SK don't want to first pick it.
Bit surprised by the Jormungandr there, because I've not seen Variety play too much of it in that solo lane. Sure, he's a fantastic god there, and he'll have it in his god pool, but it's not something that I've seen Variety really lean on for the most part. Dig, though, will take away Set and Isis. Persephone is still currently on the table.
And that's going to be the discussion for both of these teams. It's like, all right, if SK have it available, do they first pick it? Or if Dignitas even want to ban it away in the first place?
And if they don't ban it away and SK do select that Persephone, then Dignitas must have an answer for it. That's what I'm looking for then. If you're going to allow them to have Persephone, what are you doing to counter that?
Yeah, and I'm curious what that answer is.
Me too.
It can't be
I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is either, and I don't expect Dignitas to let it go through, because that would mean that you have too much pride in yourself. Because if Dignitas were first picking it yesterday, as was SK, then both of these teams see the power in this new goddess.
Minus any more balance changes coming through before the World Championships, I'm pretty sure what you're seeing out of the second pick is the 3 picks I think we're going to see mainly banned from them for this point on.
Could also be the Amaterasu sneaking into those bans, depending on how it pans out. That's been recently changed as well with the dash, with the front-loaded damage on the 2. People forget just how effective she is in the late game.
SK will select Oleron here. Will this be Zapman on the Oleron, do we expect, or is this going to be a mid-lane Oleron again?
It has to be a Zapman pick, honestly, because
Yeah.
Paul needs to be playing the carry gods. He needs to be playing gods that have setup of CCs. I'm looking at gods like Uller, potentially.
Merlin selected them. We've seen a lot of that go well. That could go either way too. Had to actually all horror win, so it doesn't really give too much of a game away. But the second pick, I'll give you an idea of where this is going. Skadi, that
Okay.
to me is an Ataraxia god.
So you know how we were saying Heroin is going to go back mid? I don't think he's going to go back mid this game. I think that Skadi is going to be for Ataraxia in
the
mid,
mid lane?
and Merlin up against Oleron is a fun little matchup that Heroin might be able to abuse.
We'll see how that works out. Then it's Dargy, and very early selection of Dargy up against Dignitas here. Is this because of a little bit of an opportunity to abuse the Merlin and Skadi?
Could be. There's not really any CC immunity on those two gods. If you can hit the Palau, which Sanford Soccer definitely can, then you're going to have to use those purification beads. And I definitely want to see SK pair that up with more beads burners. A Kumbhakarna, maybe, even a tier potentially for Belair.
I kind of like the combination of the Palau and the Sanctified Field from Oleron there.
Yeah.
You pull them into the Sanctified Field, and then you got to get back out of it again. It makes it much trickier. Dignitas going to instantly respond, though, with a snap of Circuit. This is very mobile, and it's a go-to god for Cuvo Fred.
And it becomes trickier now if you are playing Dodgy for Sanford Soccer with the Circuit lock-in, because now going Blink at level 1 means that you're going to get last breath every given moment until you hit level 12.
SK then and Dignitas into the counterban phase we go. Dig will take away the Kumbhakarna. I wonder if they'll take away the Hercules too, or whether we'll see them maybe look for that themselves.
It's possible with Dignitas having the next pick, but keep in mind the Circuit can also flex in the support position if they wanted to, which is why if you're banning away Kumbhakarna, that means you're not interested in maybe locking in your support right away.
I agree. I just don't think I've really seen Trix play too much Circuit over the seasons. It's not something that, especially with those two of the team, Cuvo and Trix, if you got a Circuit, you expect it to be Cuvo every time.
Yeah, you definitely do. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if they still run the Circuit support, if they can lock in the Hunbass after the fact.
Let's see what they go with then. Kabrakan taken out by SK. They're worried about Cuvo Fred taking that to the jungle. So they do believe that that Circuit could be going into the support role. Ares taken out as well, just trying to limit down some of Neilmar's options here. The Beads Burners are definitely there with Ares and the Dodgy Paulau. Dignitas a little bit worried about that.
They were worried about the cripple, I think, more than anything, knowing that Circuit needs the Deathbane, needs the ambush for either the engages, the runaways, but with Oleron and Uller already locked in, that means you can't really go a Musenkop on the cripple.
Geb then this time round from Dignitas. A little bit more defensive of an approach. We're not seeing as many of these aggressive warriors all the time. This match is going to be a traditional Guardian one, and Athena if that is locked in up against Geb.
It's a cleanser from the Dodgy Paulau. You need to protect Scotty and Merlin without always have to expend the beats.
And I think that kind of telegraphed what SK could do with their Guardian pick based off what Dig picked, right? They could have potentially looked at matching fire with fire in terms of aggression in the jungle in the early game, but instead they were able to go for the Athena. Gives them a bit more global presence as well.
Not only that, but beads burners is never a bad thing, right? Like Dodgy with the Athena, one's going to burn the beads, the other will follow suit. Osiris for Belair, he's going to be very aggressive, but it's variety with a counter matchup.
And would you believe it, variety still gets King Arthur.
This is his 12th King Arthur game in 26 total Dignitas Phase 2 games.
It's very interesting there that they banned Vermana there when we've seen so much King Arthur, as you mentioned before, about how much he's played this already. They're clearly not too worried about King Arthur.
Yeah, Vamana was interesting, right? Because there is some anti-attack speed with the Umbrella Ring that you're preventing from Oleron and Uller.
I know why.
Oleron can't really get away from Colossal Fury.
I think everybody at home had seen what happened to Barracuda when he was playing Oleron up against the Vamana. That's probably the reason.
Ooh. You
don't want to deal with that, and if Zamora going to get even worse. SK versus Dig, Game 1, picks and bans are in. Who are you favouring here with what's been picked, Holly?
If Dignitas can get to the late game with this Geb, with the Scotty Merlin combination, I have to favor the Chaos side, but the early game, SK feels like they can get some momentum with Paul's Uller.
We'll see if Paul Zola can make it happen. Neil Marr, you can't see him. Tricks, they'll give you a wink. Let's get to the casters for Game 1.
Thanks, Hindu. Thanks, Anatoly. As we move into SK versus Dig, it's Finch and Aggro here to bring you the call. Doug, of course, your observer. As I think that Hindu kind of did have a right breakdown there towards the end, that this early to mid game from SK Gaming is going to be particularly potent, and Dignitas going to have to weather the storm.
And I like the idea from SK because their games where they look their best are because usually it's Sam and Paul taking the ball and running away with the game. And so you give them the tools. I like the early Dodgy pick. Dodgy has been popular, but almost always as a second phase sort of selection, a fourth, fifth God pick. Why? She's so good. Pick her early, and you end up getting some pretty good counter matchups anyways against Merlin and Scotty. I like it a lot.
Neil taking some extra poke. This is all in the effort of
Kill the
stopping
dog,
Neil
maybe?
from making his way back towards Cuvo Fred. This is exactly the start Neil does every game. He wants to get back there and harass the jungler. So Adarax and Trixtank meet him in the jungle, stop him from being able to get back there to Cuvo, and he gets to live his life.
And Neil is fine with that. I think there's a big misconception on what the goal of the start is. It isn't to steal speed outright. It isn't to poke out the jungler outright. It is to make the enemy team not get optimal farm right off the bat. Because when you give teams optimal farm right off the bat, they're very good at extending that lead very easily. So Neil, all he does is make sure that Ataraxia doesn't get to go farm right away. He doesn't get to go right to the mid wave. He doesn't get to go right to speed or red, anything like that. Same for Trix, same for Cuvo. Neil did his job. He stopped Dignitas from starting where they wanted to start.
Instead, there's 3 members of Dignitas here in mid splitting this wave as Paul rotates in. He had to go over and make sure they dropped the red buff early, so Dignitas couldn't find no pathing over there to strip that one away. And Neil still a bit behind in terms of where his farm is at level 1 as opposed to Trixtank, who's level 2. But as you said, Neil very, not just fine with playing this way, but comfortable with it at this point. He does it so often, as Sam has made a bit of a rotation early. Hurry does have beads, but might get caught off guard here.
Zapman inching forward might be enough to scare Hurry off. I think that just a tiny bit of movement probably tipped Hurwind off to what was going on. And Sam's going to give up some farm, but look at what he could be doing. Not a whole lot. And he was close enough to be soaking that wave, so it's not like he got absolutely nothing on that side of the map. As soon as his back harpies are coming up on the right, he gives it up and heads on over to the farm. I've got no problem with kicking the tires, so to speak, on an early duo lane gank.
He didn't have Blink anyway, so it might not have been quite as effective as he wanted. Trickster Spirit's certainly still a strong engaged tool, but you'd like to have Blink available for those duo side ganks anyway. And as you said, he makes it to his farm, no problem. So we do talk about where, you know, where these picks are going. We did think that it would be Scotty for Ataraxia, but did you think that it was going to be Hurwind in the long lane here again that Dig would stick with putting Hurwind over here in that Hunter spot? Is we might not get a chance to talk if QO Fred gets aggressive.
Zapman too far forward. Blink is there. Beads for Zapman, but he's still in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, the ambush from QO Fred closes that gap. The flames from Hurwind burning away at him, but Zapman stays calm and makes the retreat and gets back out of there. So I can indeed go back to asking you about Hurry.
A little surprised that we don't see the Scotty against the Oleron. That seems like a matchup where Oleron might be able to be abused. As Ataraxia uses beads, didn't trust Trixtank right there in order to use the shield. That one does mean that Sam for Soccer now gets a big window to punish Ataraxia as soon as he gets that Powl out if Trixtank isn't local. A little surprised that SK doesn't ban the Geb with the dodgy early pick, but that's a conversation for a little bit later. Go into what you wanted to talk about, which is this decision on where Hurwind and Ataraxia are going. I wonder if yesterday felt more out of frustration than anything else, that things weren't going well, that they kind of defaulted back to their original roles. I do think that putting Scotty against the Oleron would have made some sense, but Ataraxia, you just put him on a comfort pick overall. Dodgy can sometimes struggle against gods that can range CC her if she's got no one to jump to with that Trickster Spirit. Ataraxia can catch Sam for Soccer out in the jungle and force that ultimate fairly easily with one of his own.
We'll see if this pick ends up working. You do just like to give Merlin that hyper farm anyway, so you might even forgo a positive matchup just to get Merlin over there where he can soak up that long lane. So not too bad as Paul is on this Uller. I feel like one of his signature picks, probably Hebo, is the big one that you thought of when he first kind of broke in onto the scene, but anything that lets Paul be aggressive early, that lets him mechanically outplay you, is the kind of pick that really feels like a Paul pick to me. And that's what this Uller is going to allow him to do. This level 5 he just ticked over to, not as big a deal as he would be on some other carries, but he'll certainly still be aggressive.
It's in his DNA, it feels like. His bread and butter picks are always these aggressive options, these dual style characters. He loves the Chronos and things like that. Not as much in mid lane in competitive, it's just less effective there than it would be in the dual scene, but that is definitely his roots, and where he really gets a lot of that practice time is in the dual arena, and it's a good spot to be working on gods like Uller. I'm a little surprised we don't see Paul play a little bit more Merlin. That feels like a god that he would probably really like, because it's just a lot of options at your disposal. He likes having those tools. It would not surprise me at all to see him have a sick Persephone. He did play it yesterday and looked pretty sick on it. That seems like a pick he would really excel with. Those are the types of gods that I always expect to see from Paul.
Well, now that our junglers are level 5, I expect we'll start to see some action, because both junglers and both supports went the Blink route, making everybody that much more susceptible to the crowd control that's out there. Now, there are some tools for Neil and Trixtank to get away with the Cataclysm, with that Defender of Olympus there from the Athena. But as for Sam and Cubo Fred, they could both potentially get caught off guard if they're the ones getting initiated on first. And now they both ticked over to 5. I'm interested to see where they'll go.
Does feel like the 3v3 in mid for SK is really centered on Paul and how aggressive he can be. He's just finished off his Ninja Tab Eyes, so he's in a pretty decent spot to start playing aggressively. But it also wouldn't surprise me too much to see SK wait until Paul's Mage's Blessing is stacked, get that extra bit of CDR. Maybe he gets going on the Transcendence for that extra little bit of power. That's when we might see them really start to take off, because Dodgy is really strong at a lot of different things. Early game is really not one of them. She is definitely a late game assassin, and as a result, I think Heartseeker is a huge buff to her. So I wouldn't be surprised to see SK, despite wanting to win this game early based on the compositions alone, to really wait a little bit longer. I think
A little bit more mid
10,
yeah.
right? Minute 10, minute 12. That's when we might start to see them play aggressively.
Just a bit towards that as Sam lurked here in the jungle. Some aggressive positioning from Dignitas with tricks this far up, and it really is cutting off Sam's ability to rotate in this fight at all. He finally just accepts that he has to go around, but I think he might have missed some of that midway farm as a result. So just some like small kind of posturing there from Dignitas that I think does net them a tiny advantage.
Both Neil and Trix dashing right in front as a blink taunt onto Cubo Fred as Trix goes in and mid. Sanford Soccer never gets off the ground. First blood for Dig.
Yeah, Ataraxia is the one that gets the kill credit, and they are on the board here already. That blink play from Neilma never really came to fruition. Whatever the idea was there with that one, Sam just got boxed out in the middle lane.
Perfect CC chain, perfect timing. The speed buff is coming up. Paul probably toss a hail of arrows over the wall and send a flyer, but wasn't up in time as he had just used it to clear the wave. Perfect timing by Dignitas to play aggressively. And Neil just, unfortunately, in a bit of the wrong spot, though I don't know how much he really could have helped Sam anyways.
Yeah, it was just tough. Like, the timing of it just did not really work out in SK's favor. For what it's worth, this game's still very much close, despite that first blood bounty just going over to Team Dignitas. You'd have expected that to pull things slightly in their favor. But SK working with a bit of an early game edge here, just likely from some better control around these neutral camps here so far. So it doesn't hurt them too bad to have lost that first kill.
Zapman's doing pretty well for himself. He has a slight level lead over in this long lane. Up level 10 to Heroine's level 9, not a big deal, but has clearly gotten the slightly better edge of either the push power and not losing something to tower, or getting these back harpies or oracles as soon as he can every single time they're up, because he has a slight lead. It's going to get a little bit bigger once he gets this wave.
Trickstick takes some damage, but he should be A-okay at this point. Sanford Soccer goes back in, a bit surprising. Wants to try and catch Trickstick after the CC immunity and does. That means that the Geb will be pulled back in, but Cataclysm still there. Hits 2 into the Shockwave and almost cost Sanford Soccer his life. Trickstick low as well.
Very, very close. Ataraxia did a very good job of staying safe, using the beads when he needed to, but also being ready to output some damage. If he doesn't force Sanford Soccer back there, then one auto on a Trickstick gets the job done. Still not a bad trade for Sanford Soccer. Doesn't even expend the blink. For his ult, he gets Cataclysm and Ataraxia's beads, so it's certainly worth his time, but needs to be wary of how much damage he's taking right now. Can't afford to be going back to base a whole bunch. He needs to be out on the map farming. He's behind Cuvo by a noticeable margin.
He certainly is, and I just like the recognition there from Sam. That felt a bit risky for them, but I think they hedged their bets there correctly and gave themselves a good chance to look for an early pick here onto this Geb. But I don't think we're giving Trickstick quite enough credit. I mean, besides that there's been a ton of gank attempts, but it's pretty common for Gebs to struggle early on in games like this. It's kind of the cost for their strong late game. But so far, Trickstick has really been under very little duress. He's been doing a good job.
Belair really in a good spot against Variety right now. Though these are the fights where you start running out of abilities sometimes. King Arthur always seems to have his up. But Belair not with the Warrior Tabi, instead goes with the Ninja Tabi. So extra attack speed. I feel like if you're going Berserkers, you should, or if you're going Ninja Tabi, maybe you should lean into the Berserkers. I don't think that's the optimal path. I think the Glad Shield is better on Osiris. So if you're going Glad Shield, I think I'd want the Warrior Tabi for that extra damage, more so than the extra auto attack speed from the Ninja Tabi. A bit of a weird split, I think, from Belair with this build. I think I prefer the Warrior Tabi, but maybe he just found that he doesn't need that extra little bit of help when it comes to the power, and he just likes the extra attack speed.
Yeah, it is a bit of splitting. I think he did pick the best two individual choices.
Yes.
You know, in those two slots, and maybe that's just the idea. It's just like he just wants the two best items, even if they don't always necessarily work as well together as perhaps if he did have the Warrior Tabi. But I think he should be okay in this trade for now. As you mentioned, King Arthur is starting to get to that point where trading against him can feel tough, even in the 1v1. But Belair been navigating it well here so far. Probably won't see much more direct action from these guys for a little while longer. But this 3v3 elsewhere, though, has been quiet so far, aside from the play from Neil and in middle lane that happened at about the same time. We're getting closer to the point, though, where these compositions start to come online a bit more for both squads.
Transcendence done for Paul alongside the Mage's Blessing. Neil Munn nearly done with Gauntlet of Thieves, whereas Trickstank has completed his. That'll be the big difference makers so far as a blink in on a Cubo again.
They are indeed ready to get things started. Cubo Fred quite low. The dash lands too, so he is going to be slowed, and it's Zapman rotating over who manages to find his way to a last hit, as he often does.
Didn't find the blink in time for Cuvo. That's what he was looking for, to blink out of danger, but just a little bit too quick on that rotation from Zapman.
Neil does a good job keeping Whirlwind away from this red buff, but it's still not going to be enough. That one gets dropped. Ataraxia finds Sam for Soccer yet again. A bit of a struggle here in the early game for Sam on this Daji.
Really has to start being a little bit more ready to use that powwow instantly on Trix's blink in, and it's a tight window to execute. Cataclysm's pretty darn quick, but you got to trust that Sam can make it work. Otherwise, he's going to continue to fall behind.
I do think that red buff was defended. And yeah, we can now tell because Ataraxia picked up Whirlwind, just already had purple. So even if he wanted it, couldn't have picked that one up. So that aggression, at least on the red buff, didn't quite pay off there for SK Gaming. And you can kind of tell just how much this long lane farm really does for these long lane carries as opposed to where they would have been if they were in the middle lane, about 3 or 4 levels up with all this mid splitting as opposed to the long lane farm. So once they start rotating in Whirlwind and Zapman, they're going to be ready to party at this point.
This is where Paul's hitting the rhythm, though. I mean, constant stance switching, using his abilities every single time they're up. Another taunt onto Trix tank, but missed axe, or no, actually Kaldir ended up eating that axe from Ataraxia. That's cute.
He had the dog in there kind of blocking him. That's why Paul wasn't autoing there either, so it was a really good spot to use that when he couldn't find a way past it. It's going to be tough. That is one of the things that people like about Scotty in that matchup, is that body block potential. But hold on. Gold Fury now at half HP. Whirlwind nearby, certainly with some steal potential, but Neil Ma gets right on zone duty. Meanwhile, Cubo Fred makes Sam for Soccer pay elsewhere. SK do get the Gold Fury, but 3 deaths for Sam early. That's starting to get rough.
Hasn't even used the blink yet, I don't think. He tried to find Cubo with that powwow, and Cubo just simply walked out. That's a big deal for SK Gaming's jungler, but regardless, SK as a team is playing pretty well, but look at how it's affected Sam's build path already. A lot of times you want to go Hydras or Transcendence in that slot, really lean into how much physical power scaling Daji has or her great ability to auto-cancel. Instead, Sam feels like he needs the Magi's just so he can survive until he gets to level 12.
And I'm not so sure that he's wrong. It's just that, as you said, it's going to affect that damage curve for him a little bit more than what you might want. SK looks like they want to try and move over to the Pyromancer, and I've liked these last 2 sequences where maybe some of their aggression in the 3v3 hasn't worked, but they can be objective focused. Variety though on his way, when Cataclysm from Trix Tank slows them down, and Neil has to use Defender of Olympus just for the disengage, but Dig have more waiting in the wings. Cuba, Fred, and Ataraxia join the show, and now they're the ones pulling the Pyromancer, and I'm not even sure that SK can stop it. Belair, great timing on the flail, strips it away.
Cubo gonna get chased down as well. Perfect sequence for SK. Belair keeps everyone busy from Dignitas, making sure that no one can come and help out onto that chase from Cubo Fred. Cubo also feeling like he needs a Magi's. Both these supports really causing problems for the enemy junglers and changing the way they have to build. I love it.
And I think that both these junglers have made the correct call in that they just can't afford to be getting CC'd this often. Neither one of them have had the impact that is typical of either their picks or the players playing them here so far. So the Magi's could certainly help them out. But SK turned around what looked like a bad situation because of the rotations there from Variety and Trix Tank. They just get there a good deal ahead of the actual damage dealer. So even though the initiation was really good, I mean, Atarax and Whirlwind just weren't there.
Not even close, and neither one is on a super long-range character anyways, so bit of an unfortunate situation, I'd say, for Dignitas. Is Belair on the receiving end of Excalibur's wrath. Needs to be careful because Cubo's here.
He certainly is. This could be trouble. Blink into the Cobra's Kiss, into the Death Bane. Lord of the Afterlife forced out defensively, but a nice ambush from Cubo Fred, and Variety's damage seals up that kill. Belair finally punished here on the right-hand side.
Too far forward, especially, I mean, look at where Sam is. Look at where Neil is. I mean, no one is even close to him. Neil has no Defender of Olympus, still on cooldown. Definitely a mistake there from Belair.
To be fair, Belair had really been under very little pressure all this game. Perhaps he just hadn't been expecting a rotation from Cuba Fred. These junglers have been relatively quiet. But as you said, I mean, if you're that far forward, you got to be ready to deal with it. And that time, Belair wasn't. That's going to cost him a Tier 1 tower as well, as Cuba Fred groups up with Variety to take that one down.
Now, this Magi's of both junglers are not, they aren't equal Magi's, I would say. Sam, he needs it for sure, but also won't get as much value out of it because there's a lot of CC from Dignitas that can proc it. Shockwave from a distance is the easiest one to commit without losing a big engagement tool for Team Dignitas. I mean, Cubo can toss out a Cobra's Kiss. Whirlwind can proc it. I mean, there's a lot of things that get rid of it
on the other side, no matter what Cuvo is getting Magi's with, it's a big cooldown. It's either Zapman's Consecration when he's right on top of him, Neilma's Taunt, Paul's Axe, all of those are critical. You don't have easily wastable CC on the other side.
Wow, suddenly, at 16 minutes, this is the time to start all-inning on Osiris, and Dignitas have been correct about it. They find yet another pick onto Belair. Now, Variety will not get pulled back in. He's got beads. I feel like we've seen this a little bit more lately from our solo laners, and that gets him out of that engagement.
Even still, I don't think he needed to. He just didn't know how many people were on the rotation.
Right.
If he knew it was just Sam, he would have gotten pulled. That's a 4-level differential. Sam is the same level as Trix Tank. That is, in my opinion, the worst feeling in Smite. When as a damage dealer, you are the same level as the enemy support. You just feel like you can't do anything.
So far, he has not been able to do much of anything on this Dodgy. We haven't seen many blinks or many powwows from him that have been effective. And Paul and Neil way pushed up here into the jungle, especially Paul. I think he's recognized his only way out is forward. And I don't even know that that's particularly true. Ambush, last breath should be here for Cuvo Fred. No, it's on cooldown, so Paul gets stunned. Aegis buys him a second, but I mean, they were just very far in the enemy jungle.
It was really Paul's position to clear that mid wave as all of Dignitas is on Sam for Soccer's speed. There's no way that he has a path out just going south, so then needs to go north. Neilma doesn't at least die alongside him, and we see that a lot with Athena, where you end up just bringing yourself to the team fight to ultimately die alongside your carry. Could have been worse for SK.
Look at all this pen here for Heroin, though. The Divine Ruin into this Obsidian Shard. I talked about it earlier, once they start joining, it'll be scary. It still hadn't happened. They're both bottom of the player damage chart because they've been hyper farming. But now that they're getting more and more ready to fight around Heroin, this is going to be a big issue. Neil, level 12 as opposed to 19 from Heroin. It's so scary where these hunters are. As Primal Fury low. Dignitas ready for the engagement, though. Trix Tank brought down well below half, and Variety zoning Belair.
Belair's only level 15. Frenzy popped on both ends. Dignitas get gold.
And Sam for Soccer takes to the sky with a powwow, pulls nothing. Cuvo Fred might have had the Magi's proc there as Zapman wants to try and be the front line for them, but I think Dignitas have already robbed the bank. They're on the disengage, but they'll get themselves a Variety on the back end. SK make them pay at least a bit.
Something in SK's favor. It might be a tier 1 tower in mid as well. They need it, because even though gold is not that different right now, I feel like XP is massively in Dignitas' favor.
Sure
Over
is.
3,000 for as small of as a gold lead that is. It's really in the XP department that they're getting hurt. Pyromancer just spawns at the right time. SK is able to get more out of this than I initially thought, but that's if Dignitas decides to give it up.
Not too bad a fight here for SK, though, all things considered, as Dignitas looking in the wings. There's a big ultimate advantage for them, but it's not going to be a big skirmish. Unless SK wanted to make it one, they start to push forward, and I think correctly recognizing this is the time to fall back.
You know Teleport's probably up for Variety. He's going to respawn, and all of a sudden, you're just down ults, and that's the biggest difference. Finally, XP starting to normalize a little bit, though. I mean, Belair, because of Variety's death, gets to catch up in that solo lane. Sam for Soccer is only down about a level now. Zapman very close to what Heroin has achieved. And Paul and Ataraxia have evened out. So you're looking at a much better situation. Good response from SK Gaming. And Variety splitting off from the rest of the team ends up really hurting Dignitas there. I mean, that's pathing, and it feels like such a small thing, and it is. But at this level, you'll get punished for things like that. Trix Tank can't close the gap to shield him over the wall, and he ends up dying before he ever gets help.
Did we update the art for the Magi's cloak? It looks so nice.
Sure did.
Yeah, look at that. Looking clean, huh?
Nice little new, we've always called it the bubble, but now it really looks like a bubble.
It does, yeah. It has that kind of like rainbowy sheen on it. I'm loving it right now. Erendite being worked on there by Cuvo Fred. And I don't know what Hindu was saying about this yesterday. I think we're struggling with the name, but I think it is worth bringing up here yet again, because we just don't see it that much. It felt like it wasn't accelerating that much of what junglers wanted to do, but Cuvo Fred picking it up here.
Cuvo, a whole lot of not penetration in the build so far, but Erendite does give you good power, some CDR. I mean, he's going to have a good amount of that now once he finishes that Erendite, or actually it stays at 10%, so he's already got that 20% CDR in the build between that and the Blackthorn Hammer. He's really relying on that natural penetration in Serket's kit by the Prot Shred, and of course the true damage of Last Breath. I like it. I wonder, I guess Erendite would proc off of the, or is it next ability hit that you get the Erendite proc? I wonder if it procs off of your last breath tick damage, and you instantly get that burst of extra damage. If so, I think that makes this item really nuts on Serket, and would totally understand why Cuvo's building it.
Certainly get a chance to see a bit more of how Cuvo plans to apply that later on, as this game has been relatively slow-paced. SK did a really good job in that last skirmish around the Gold Fury, finding the pick onto Variety, and then coming back over and grabbing Pyromancer to kind of even things back up, because Dignitas has started to build themselves a nice little bit of a lead, which means that SK is kind of, I don't know, I thought that this would be a draft that would want to skirmish a little bit sooner than this, but they'll get to start having some fights now around Zapman on this rather fed Oler.
I think it's really that Sam for Soccer just got so taken out of the game early that may have been the game plan, but then they had to make the change. And they've adapted very well. My only concern is as more and more players get Magi's cloaks on Dignitas, if I'm at Araxia or Heroin, I'm buying one as fast as I can.
Well, Dig are starting this up, and they're trying to sneak it before SK
Speaking of
can even
fast.
get here. That's a frenzy popped, and Dig melt the Fire Giant, and Neilmog could be in some trouble now, too. The Sanctified Field nowhere near enough. Dig get the FG and a pick, and I don't even think they're done chasing. They're ready to re-engage. Belair's got to start running for his life.
Still has the ultimate, so it's probably safe and sound. Dignitas just realized, hey, we've got Merlin, who's level 20, and an upgraded Frenzy, and Ataraxia, who just finished Executioner. Why don't we just do the Fire Giant? And they did it in 3 seconds,
So
maybe?
quick.
It was so much damage, and Dignitas just make SK pay for not being exactly in the right spot at exactly the right time, and I can't even fault SK. That's really just Dignitas playing with their comp well.
This is such great awareness from Team Dignitas to start trying to force down the right side. Phoenix Tricks Tank goes right to the carries and forces 2 sets of beads out from him with the Cataclysm, and it costs him his life. Belair would have been there with the Lord of the Afterlife to clean it up anyway. Variety is now dropped as well. 2-man taunt from Neilmaw brings everyone back in. A double for Zapman. Paul takes down Ataraxia, and suddenly Dignitas have bit off a little bit too much.
Man, Neil's ultimate to get him right into the thick of that team fight instantly changes everything. And now Dignitas, after a great Fire Giant, have nothing to show for it except for Cuvo Fred. I mean, they only got 1 kill on the back end and a tier 2 tower in right. They will lose more than that with this push from SK. They might lose mid-Phoenix. It's going to be close, but with an Olerun and an Uller, I feel like it's certainly on the table.
And they just lost that backline battle. I feel like Trickstank never got to be Geb for them that fight because he was at the front line trying to Cataclysm aggressively for the team.
Are they going to end?
Yeah, they might just lose this one. Mid-Phoenix is certainly low. Cubefriend and Trickstank are here.
Zap
And
has ult.
SK, they're hesitating a bit. Their health bars are not fully healthy, but Belair has moved in. Sanctified Field now been dropped as well from the Olerun. Frenzy popped 2 in the Titan at half HP. Dignitas caught snoozing at the
I
wheel.
don't know.
Could be in trouble. Titan now low. Paul finds 1 kill.
Did they get
Damage
it?
onto the structure.
Wow.
That's SK taking game 1 over Dig.
That was sick. What a counter end from
Wow.
SK Gaming. And man, just showing you what this double Hunter composition can do when you give it space to take down your objectives. Olerun, very, very good at taking those off the map quickly. And a big comeback victory by SK. One small mistake by Dignitas on that right side Phoenix, and they just lose the whole game.
And let me tell you, man, this is not a good sign for Dignitas. If you consider what happened with them Thursday, and then now losing this game, one game, this is a team that has some tilt potential. Certainly does. And now that they've lost this game, especially in that fashion, someone needs to be in that room helping those boys get their head right.
I'm sure Biggie is just like, man, hopefully Biggie learned a good stand-up routine last night.
Sure,
You know what I mean? I think that's what I'd be doing, just trying to bring some sort of levity to the room.
Yeah.
Because you're totally right. I mean, Dignitas, no way they are in a good mood coming into today after a loss to Obey Alliance yesterday. And that's a bad start for them here in their set today.
And remember how important this set is for SK. They are out of automatic bid contention if they were to drop this set, so a huge game 1 victory for them. We'll see if Dignitas can get their heads right here in just a few minutes.
Skillshot, the official production partner of the SMITE Pro League.
welcome back to the desk. Game 1 is over, and SK Gaming take the game. Joining me on the desk is Anatoly. And Anatoly, how did that happen?
It was a weird set of circumstances because SK, they were doing good objectively, getting the goal theory, but then Dignitas countered back with that tier 1 middle tower. San Francisco struggled, but then Zatman stepping it up alongside Paul anyway, which is what you want out of your backline carries. Fire Giant goes down in like 4.5 seconds because of the upgraded Frenzy, and then Dignitas do a Dignitas special.
And that was lose. Is that what you mean?
Throw at a Phoenix.
Oh, the worst situation to be in. Let's have a little look back at the Fire Giant stuff first of all and see exactly how this one broke down. Because I'm really worried about Dignitas overall. Here's a little zoom through of what went on.
They started it at 22-15, goes down sub 22-20. Neilma dies immediately after this, but then Dignitas take this 5-on-4 advantage on the right side of the map, overextend a little bit too long, gets heavily punished. Sam gets off a really good pal out. Belair making sure nothing's going to happen alongside Trick's tank as he falls.
Yeah, I'm just noticing the front line was in deep there. The back line was kind of left exposed, and then the chase was on without Trix taking there for the shields. Horriban explodes, that's Araxia explodes, and SK is zooming.
The thing was, SK had their own upgraded frenzy to find those 4 picks, and then a great call from SK Gaming, knowing they just had enough DPS to end the game, because even despite Dignitas losing that fight on the right side, Phoenix, it felt like SK weren't capable of winning quite yet, but SK had other intentions.
We also mentioned as well, this is a very important set for SK Gaming. They are still in with a shot of automatic qualification to the World Championships. It's them or Splice at the moment, but to do that, they have to beat Dignitas here. Dignitas, they have already qualified, but their performances as of late have really started to slip, and the facial expressions of this team are starting to get a little bit drearier as time goes on.
Yeah, Splice are still in control of their own destiny. SK need to hope that they win out, and Splice loses out. But Dignitas losing to Obey yesterday in a epic 5-game set, I think they might still be a little bit demoralized, especially after the way this first game went. Losing in 24 minutes, unheard of if you're a Dignitas.
I also look at this from the situation of, like, you lose yesterday to Obey and now you're 1 game down against SK. These aren't the best teams in the SPL. No disservice to them. These are like middle to lower end of the pack teams that Dignitas are currently struggling with. Is this a sign that Dignitas can only really play up these days to people of a higher caliber? Do they play down to their opposition? It's starting to look that way.
It might be the case, honestly, and if I'm Dignitas, I have to be revitalized after that last loss. The team needs to be challenged, as Dignitas kind of casually went through phase 1 until they ran into the brick wall of what was it, Renegades, I believe. So couldn't really find victory there, and now phase 2 not doing too hot either.
And that's the crazy thing, is that phase 1, Dignitas were the team to beat for the entirety, almost entirety, of the entire season. But then they started to suffer losses. And these losses have become more regular, more consistent, and more problematic, where Dignitas haven't really found answers.
After that reverse sweep that E-United delivered to Dignitas to wrap up phase 1, I don't think Dignitas looked the same since phase number 1, so needing to find some sort of footing if they want to come back even in this set.
Amaterasu and Jormungandr will be the bans from SK so far. Dignitas once again with Isis and Set. Do not be surprised to see Dignitas have to ban Persephone, especially when SK finally do ban that Thor. Persephone on the table, as is Ullara.
Definitely going to be the case so far, as seeing similar bans. I think, like you mentioned before, Persephone has to be banned if you're a Dignitas fan, as last time around it was Ullara first picking for SK Gaming. Don't see anything wrong with that for game 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's not broke, don't try and fix it so far. SK do win the game. It wasn't a clean game from them by any stretch of the imagination. Dignitas were in control for portions of it, but if Dignitas are going to make the mistakes and SK can punish it with the same composition, they could look for something similar.
And I don't think that Dignitas' composition was bad after this Merlin pick. It was the Scotty. I don't know if they have to pick it right now. I don't expect SK Gaming to bring that up, but you want to save your other frontline picks potentially for counter matchups. That's kind of what we saw when Dignitas last picked the King Arthur.
And we will see a change up there. One with the Scotty will be a Jubalonke this time round instead. Darkest of Nights will make a big difference in these team fights. It doesn't stun at the end anymore, but what it does do is clutter the communications and the vision of SK Gaming. And that could cause problems for SK if they're trying to sync up for a gank or a turnaround play.
Not only that, you're going to have the CC immunity on the second half of your Rising Jaguar. That could be another reason we're seeing the switch up. Scotty was forced to get some defensive peels with the form of the Geb. So anytime Tricksync was dead and didn't have those peels, Scotty was vulnerable after the fact.
SK switching up a little bit though. They've drafted Athena for Neilmar last game. It's an early Fenrir pick that has definitely been something that he's prioritized for himself a little bit more so. Dignitas, meanwhile, are going to go back to the circuit again. So opening draw from Dig, small adjustment, no Scotties, you belong instead, but still the same sort of positions and roles. One mage, one hunter, one assassin.
Probably going to save their solo pick for last on the Chaos side. A very common theme, trying to make sure that Variety has the one up against Belair that had an early deficit, I think. The King Arthur was a good look. An interesting build as well, going for the Ninja Tabai on the Osiris.
That's true. I'm wondering whether we see the Geb again from Tricksync. I think it's a good pick to deal with the Fenrir that's going to come into play on the axes, shields, just to get rid of the Ragnarok. But I think it's a disservice to Trix at the moment to leave him on a defensive Guardian like that.
I agree.
I think the meta is definitely on the invades and pressure in the early game. And Trix plays well in that meta. The Herculeses, the Wukong. I know we don't see Wukong these days. I'm not calling for it, by the way. I'm just saying the sort of aggressive Erlang Shens could be something of an option.
And honestly, if I'm SK, I kind of want to see that Geb for those reasons you just mentioned. And not only that, Fenrir can just pick up the Geb, right?
Yeah.
Like you can stun him with the Unchained, you can then pick him up with the Ragnarok, and then look to burst him down. Like, look how Paul and Zabman played that team fight on the right side of the Phoenix. Their damage per second was just out of the roof.
Don't often use the word salty run back myself, but at the moment it looks similar to one from Dignitas here. SK Gaming, one change each for both teams so far, with that Geb now selected. If it's a King Arthur as a last pick for Dignitas, it will be pretty much the same comp, with a slight change towards Ataraxia's selection. SK, though, still have some options here. Osiris once more. And last time we saw a Dargy. I don't know if we'll see it this time.
It's banned, so Dignitas not going to allow it this time.
I suppose we won't see this time.
That Hunbats is also banned, so can't see more CC from there. Thor's banned, so...
All right, calm down.
Loki, obvious. Like Loki, obviously.
No.
Like Loki, obviously.
Well, why is it obviously, Tolly?
It's not obvious to me.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure you and the fans at home know that Loki should never be picked in a competitive game. Susanoo, however, is a different story.
Yeah, I was going to make mention how Susanoo is very good still, right? Like the Wind Siphon, the Typhoon, controlling so much space, and Dignitas needs to find ways to survive that. Like Merlin is going to be aggressive. Heroin likes to try to look for poke damage, and Zephyr Soccer likes to gank the long lane.
No King Arthur, this time a bit more difference here, a bit more CC coming out from Dignitas in the form of that tier. This has been Variety's second go-to as the season's progressed. So they've got a bit more CC with that tier instead of King Arthur. Sure, King Arthur relies more on the ultimate than anything and consistent poke, but tier can get big combinations off to set up for the team.
And you also need ways to survive. Tier having the passive to reduce the amount of CC duration that you have is good against the Fenrir, good against the Susanoo, even the Osiris that's looking to stun you with the Judgment Tower.
I also think as well, when we saw the King Arthur last game, if you think about the composition Dignitas had, their Phoenix sieging was kind of awkward because they had to even use Blink, Geb, ultimates. At least this time they've got the tier that can Lawbringer in potentially to set something up.
Yeah, a lot of beats burners there. Gab Cataclysm, Tier Fearless, or Cat Cobra's Kiss into the last breath. I think Dignitas have effective ways of picking off those individual targets.
But SK have got fire to fight fire. Dignitas are down a game. Can SK go 2 up? Let's find out.
This is a critical game for Team Dignitas, getting this one and resetting the set back to even after dropping to Obey yesterday and then essentially a throw on that right side Phoenix in the last game. Certainly not one that they'd won outright, but a fight that didn't have to go that abysmally bad. And now they've got the competition to do it. Gilbofred back on Circuit, Variety not on the King Arthur. He's on Tier this time instead. But Sam probably won't have 2 bad early games in a row.
But it's another god that is not very good in the early game. I'd say
Sure.
Susanoo and Daji, 2 of the worst early game assassins. So it's a little bit concerning.
Variety,
So is this.
Blink Fearless, that's going to bring Belair into a bad spot. It's going to bring him into the grave. Variety finds first blood as they catch Belair out by mid-camps.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. Now, Neilma is going to be in a weird spot, and Dignitas should know that this is something that he's done, is this loop around, try and steal it. Deathbane's so good at securing, though. So is Shockwave.
remember, it's not so much about stripping it away, but Neil doesn't even slow them down, right? It's about about slowing this path like that from him, and doesn't even do that. So Cubo Fred makes it out of there pretty easily. He will be able to harass Trickstank here in the jungle some, but I imagine this will be more about trying to stick towards Cubo Fred.
Looks like the game plan will be the exact same on red buff, knock up into Deathbane, but with Zapman out clearing, it does make it a little bit more awkward. Ataraxia is on the way. Should be secured, and indeed it is. Neil this time very smart to hold on to that Unchained Elite.
Yes, very well done there in terms of the confirm between this Geb and the Circuit. Hard for Neil to do much about that, so he heads right back to his own side of the jungle, having accomplished a little bit. I mean, he made them split that red buff, I'm sure, more than they would have liked to, and slowed it down a bit, but not a ton accomplished.
No, and if you look at the XP per minute, he's still at 0. Hasn't gained any XP quite yet. Tricks at 150-ish. Tell there's certainly a difference there, but it'll catch up fairly quickly. Neil's going to be able to walk around with Zapman, get a little bit of farm. I like this idea from Dig, though. This is a great spot to lay a trap.
The link into the Cobra's Kiss. They're low. They even have the Rising Jaguar from Ataraxia. Neil Ma gets shockwaved up, and that's not going to help the XP per minute. Another kill for Dignitas as Neil gets sent back to base. But Trickstank's low, and Paul wants to go aggressive, blinking in. He's got Zapman right here. They can't do quite enough damage, but Ataraxia might be the one in trouble now. Rising Jaguar allows for the reposition.
Didn't force too much there from Dignitas, and that's farm that Zapman lost. He's going to miss a whole wave on that left-hand side for that chase. That
even makes it.
That's pretty rough.
They've got him inside this slow here now, but Cubo Fred without the blink can't follow up on this one. So Zap is going to make it back towards that tier 1 tower. Not quite as bad as that one could have been for SK Gaming. I like that aggression, trying to find something there in the jungle, but Dignitas have been so clean throughout this early game so far.
I mean, when you get beat by the early game going really poorly for you against the 9th seed yesterday, you've got to spend all day and all night getting ready for what another team's going to do to you, which is put pressure on you in the early game, especially a team like SK. Neil, one of the most consistent early game invaders, so it's got to be something you're ready for, and Dignitas looked prepared. That certainly was not the problem for them in game 1.
Say so. As this time Whirlwind is back on the Merlin, that means it's Ataraxia on the Shibalanke instead of the Scotty that he's taking here into the middle lane. And I'm glad we're seeing more of Shibalanke. I know that the ultimate lost the stun, the tail end, but Shibalanke certainly still has plenty of relevance as long as he has the Darkest of Nights. He's still pretty strong in team fights too, with the Poison Darts and the Rising Jaguar, and free power is never a bad thing as Zapman steals the purple.
And look at what the start has done. I mean, even though it looks so bad for SK, we've been following Neil. That's who it's really bad for. I mean, Sam is level 4, whereas Cubo just now hit level 3. Zapman's getting a little bit of lane pressure now. I mean, you can see where this start really gets its popularity from. And it's the ability to set your own jungler up for some success, because Trix has to just stand right next to his jungler and steal his farm to make sure he's getting it.
Does indeed work out for SK. They've got some slight edges in just about every lane. If you could have just pushed a button to give some of your support's farm over to your jungler, you would do that too. So this is functionally that same thing. You're just slamming
me doing the slam, slam the button emoji,
exactly.
Like the 10 times one. You know what I mean? Like steal my support's farm to get me ahead. Yes, please.
And that's essentially what the same thing is. It does require quite a bit more execution, though. And we've seen it go wrong for these supports. We've seen it go wrong for Aurora. We've seen it go wrong for PBM and for Neil Moss, certainly. So it's not without its risks. But I think you do set yourself up more times than not to have your carries, the ones that you expect to be winning you the game anyway, to be in a good position.
Dignitas, despite a 2-kill lead, are down 700 gold. I mean, that shows you how potent this start really can be and how much mid-camp control and things like that you can get off of it. It's also pick dependent. I mean, Shibalanke nowhere near as good at fighting in the early game as Cooler. Sam for Soccer being able to get a bunch of farm. I mean, he's sitting at full boots level 5. Compared to Cubo's level 4 with boots 2. This is a good spot for Susano to be in. He's already out of the worst part of his game, which is pre-5.
He started rocking and rolling with the Typhoon, one of those abilities that can feel so frustrating to fight against. As Dignitas do a good job securing the red this time, won't let Neil come in for the defense. So we are going to need to see some nice play from Sam here on it. Remember last game he had some early game struggles, was down 0-3-1 at one point as he didn't have the beads early. Does the same thing this game with that blink, but this time under far less duress.
Wonder if he was tempted to go with beads this time around just because of how easy it was for Dignitas to punish him in game number 1. More mobile on this character for sure, but also no CC immunity, whereas Dodgy, he had the option of going up into the Powwow, just never seemed to get it off. Now, in order to get out of the Blink Cataclysm, you're going to have to counter Blink the Blink, which was still an option for him in game 1 and never really happened. So if I'm Dignitas, I'm trying to do the exact same thing. Just Sam hasn't spent any time in mid this time around. He's really spent all his time in the jungle. It's setting Paul up with a little bit more farm. Neilma is really the one that's suffering the most here for SK. And I think he's just fine with that. He's setting his teammates up to just win him the game.
And I think that he's going to get a huge spike in relevance at level 5 anyways. So even if he is a bit behind, that Ragnarok is very good against Geb in particular at bringing him out of position and allowing the team to blow him up. So even if he does kind of drag his feet into 5, I think it's such a boost in his relevance that he gets from it that it's really not too bad of a trade for SK Gaming at all.
Agreed, and I'm surprised that we see again a composition built around picking someone out and CCing that one person and killing them, and then no Geb ban. I mean, Geb is such a good pick up against this Fenrir. They get the opportunity again, but again SK banned Kabrakan and they banned Vamana. I don't know the last time I saw Variety play Vamana. It's been a long time.
Right.
And is it a great matchup against Olorun? No doubt it is. It is no fun. And maybe it's just that man speaking the loudest during picks and bans, but still surprised.
Neilma aggressive onto Variety this time, not the Geb as you might have thought, but they're still too far away from Trickstank to stop all this damage. Now comes the Geb shield to the Shockwave, but Typhoon cleans that kill up. Sam for Soccer already having a better game.
Starting off with a kill for SK Gaming, another blue buff invade, but a lot of credit goes to Belair in that gank.
Almost
he makes that
all.
whole thing happen just because he forces Variety's Lawbringer earlier on. It was down, and so that means it's an easy pickup kill for Neilma, even with a Darkness of Nights, even with Trickstank being able to close the gap and get that shield off.
That's exactly what I was saying, man. This Ragnarok is such a strong tool once you hit level 5, especially if you can pick up the people whose job it would be to bail you out were you picked up. In that case, it was just by being away from Trickstank for long enough that it didn't matter when he showed up. But in the future, I mean, if you go to the Geb, there are no more Geb.
It's a good point, but I like the way that Trix is itemizing with that in mind. Looks like it's going to be an early sovereignty for physical composition. Cuvo also has that in mind. He's starting off with a round shield. Will probably turn into a void shield. Could also be shifters. Either one works pretty well in that slot for Cirquette. Same sort of idea as game 1, where you don't need a whole lot of extra protection or extra damage necessarily, or pen, because she has it all built in already.
Exactly right. Cubo Fred should be able to make good use of it. I wonder what's going to be the plan for them on these second relics from Dignitas. This is so many blinks from them early, and they haven't been particularly aggressive. It did help them get that first blood, or rather onto Belair, but aside from that, I'm curious if there's going to be shells coming in after this. Like, where do you think they're going to be going?
Shell looks good to me against a composition that has a lot of characters and want to auto-cancel quite a bit. Could also go Horrific Emblem, very good against these double auto-attackers. Slow then down their output in this game. I wouldn't mind a Horrific necessarily. Also, not a lot of innate CC immunity on the other side. In fact, it's only Neil and Belair who have it, so Horrific actually looking pretty good by my estimation.
Couldn't be a bad selection here for Dignitas. Perhaps slot back onto Variety, as this is another red buff invade coming through for SK. We saw 2 red buffs on their side before they even dropped this one. So they've had control of this left side jungle, and were able to make a nice play over on the right too. That is not a good recipe if you're rooting for the black and yellow here in this game.
Despite those first 2 kills, it's been all SK this whole
really
game.
has been, yeah.
I mean, look at, even with the first bloods, it never dipped into red territory. And Dignitas just seem a little bit unprepared for how to respond to this early game. The actual level 1, where the support is, they are prepared for. It's afterwards. It's how are we fanning out? How are we getting our farm and distributing it back into the side lanes? It's the inability to make sure that that's working, and it's hurting them right now. Now, right now, it's fine because there isn't a huge lead, but as soon as SK starts doing things like this, it becomes a lot harder.
Yeah,
This
look
is
at how
gone.
quickly they burst this down. Catches Trickstank before he gets to the CC and being part of rollout, and that forced Cataclysm out from Trickstank in response. So a free gold fear over here for SK Gaming, and Dignitas barely in frame in view on that Gold Fury. Just couldn't even get there.
This is the SK Gaming we saw at the very beginning of Phase 1. Coming into the year, they were aggressive early on. They loved this playstyle. They tried to slow down their playstyle a little bit, and I think it was helpful to understand how to be a better team, but ultimately this is where this team's identity should be, I think. They play so well through their mid 3v3. Paul has been 2v1ing in mid this whole game. Ataraxia is down 2 levels because he's needed tricks there to hold his hand, because Paul has been able to bully him in the 2v1. Imagine what would have happened if he's alone.
Would have been rough, man. I mean, like you said, Xbalanque into this cooler is not a great matchup anyway. And Ataraxia certainly needs some help. It's Pyromancer time, though. I just checked my watch. Trickstank here to try and slow things down. The Shockwave a bit early. If the steal was what was on his mind, that forces a shell at the very least to confirm it, but they do grab Pyro, and now Variety in some trouble. He's being locked down, pulled back in, does manage to get the Lawbringer off, but Typhoon, not quite enough damage. Trickstank keeps him alive, but it might cost Trickstank his life as Belair able to keep up the chase, but that's good news. Cubo Fred found Neilma elsewhere.
Neil even needed to shell the Pyromancer damage. Certainly can't get in there to contest a big crit onto Heroin. Zapman has him dead to rights. That little bit of crit chance ends up paying off.
And that action has not stopped yet. Cubo Fred battling it out with Sam for Soccer, but Belair here, the beefier solo laner to add a bit of an edge for SK Gaming.
Love the way that Sam just keeps Cubo in an awkward position, keeps him on his toes that whole fight. Stormkata's away, and then Jetstream's back, and then waits for what Cubo's going to do. He can either peel around the left side of that blue buff rock and get out of danger, or if we see the ambush, he'll just come right back. I love that.
Oh, continuing the aggression, almost finds Ataraxia, and he does, even with Trickstank right there in his face. Paul's been a monster so far this game on the Uller, and not just him. Zapman must have been bullying Heroin this long lane all game long because of how much they've been getting these repeated invades. Both of those matchups have really been going well for SK.
I don't understand. Trix comes into lane and just shields Ataraxia to show him he has it. And then Paul goes, cool, you're dead now. I mean, that was so odd to watch that happen. I mean, Dignitas just don't seem in it right now. I really think that the loss yesterday and the loss today have really weighed on them, and they just aren't playing as well as we've seen them play all year.
Yeah, this feels like a bit of a different Dignitas. And remember, there was a while in Phase 1 where they were the top card. I know Rival kind of reclaimed that spot towards the end, but Dig were undefeated for a long time in Phase 1-2. This felt like the one everyone was measuring themselves against, but in MSI, in Phase 2, they haven't quite been at that same level, it's felt like here to me. And I think we're starting to see that culminate a bit here in this week. It's important that these guys recover from this if they do end up losing and bounce back. We are very close to Worlds.
Ataraxia is 4 levels down right now.
Yeah. He hasn't not been competitive here this time. That's Cataclysm already for Trickstank as Neil brings the Geb back like a chew toy for the rest of SK Gaming. But good damage from Heroin over the wall deters the aggression, but Belair puts him in the dirt with the Lord of the Afterlife over the wall. Trickstank, see you later.
Axe off the mark from Paul, but he's got this tower under wraps.
Yep.
Certainly. He's been on tower line all game, and Cubo just has not been able to come in and help out at all. Been too worried about keeping up in his own farm. I mean, this is rough right now.
It's been disjointed. Sanctified Field should spell the end here for Variety, and it certainly does. Very difficult for anyone to make their way out of that one. They don't get the tier 2 tower, but they get yet another pick, keep Dignitas staggered, and now this farm from them has started to really get out of control. An 8K lead, and Cubo Fred out trying to make an individual play, does make it out.
That was a pretty sick Cobra's Kiss to link Paul to Neil, but still a bad spot. Paul cannot get caught lazy backing here. Links are up for Cubo. Decides not to use it.
And remember, SK Gaming are pretty valuable right now, especially Paul and Sam, as they have not died yet this game. So they got to be careful that they don't, as you said, kind of give up an unnecessary death around here to give Dignitas a way back in.
I mean, normally for a team like Dig that is susceptible to letting their emotions get the best of them at times, this is where I'd say surrender this one. It's not worth the arguments that you'll get into in the late game on how you got here or whatever it is. I think it might be too late for that, honestly. I mean, at this point, maybe you just hope that you can do to SK what SK did to you. But remember, Game 1, it feels like it was a huge throw from Dignitas.
Right.
But there was one
It was.
team fight that
Yeah.
game, and it was on right side Phoenix, and Dig lost.
And for what it's worth, I think SK are the best Phoenix defense team in the league. They're very
really good
happy
at
to
it.
come back to that and make that call ahead of a lot of other teams.
They are very good at that. That is a strength of this team, no doubt. And it's a good one to have when your other strength is the early game. When that doesn't go well, you're going to be on Phoenix defense a lot. And SK do very well in that instance. What was Dignitas favored to win Game 1? Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. But it was not a huge lead. That was not a catastrophic throw. There was a 1 5-on-5 that game because the Fire Giant went down because Dig just ripped it. I mean, they just went for it by themselves.
Sam able to get away from a little bit of duress over here on the left-hand side. Meanwhile, Dignitas pushed away to push down this tier 1. Neil, though, wants to get aggressive. Variety has to use beads to get away from the Ragnarok. So a nice little win for SK if they're planning some aggression. But the Fury's already gone down. They've already gotten that. Instead, they want Trix Tank. He's stuck in the sanctified field. And what can the Geb do there?
Do you think he had fun in that moment?
Oh,
you think he had a good time?
I mean, he went for a bit of a ride.
Yeah.
I don't know how fun it was.
Man, Susano plus the Ola run is so nasty. And we see Dig run that combo. It's just that Heroin usually plays Susano and Ataraxia usually plays the Ola run. And this version seems to be working out a little bit better than that combination has.
It certainly is. SK now firmly in control. They're going to move over towards this Fire Giant pit to take down the Pyromancer. Dignitas already from home. No way they can try and defend this, but looks like SK aren't ready to force things just yet. They're going to take some time to back, spend some of their gold. They're up 12k experience, 9,400 gold at this point. It's just so much that Dignitas are looking up at. One thing I do want to say, though, is that Dig do have a pretty good defensive squad. You always do when you have a Merlin on your team, but it's into SK who play around Phoenixes so well.
If you're SK, I mean, you're pretty comfortable jamming Fire Giant at this point. I mean, you are so far ahead. It is always a concern that what's the easiest way to let the enemy team back into this game? We pull fire, we lose it, we throw there, we get wipes, whatever. But at the same time, you don't want to let off the gas at this point. You are so far ahead.
He's been put into combat, so no blink. Now he's been axed, and this is all giving time for Neil Mom to catch up here as well. The leave to keep him in combat. Force the Lawbringer. You're not letting him get out of here with that blink. He doesn't have beads, and Variety drops. Paul does a ton of work there to set up for that kill.
But Belair earned it, don't forget. I mean, that was a 6 Spirit Flail right there. Nicely done.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, he came in and got that play at the end, so what can you say? Fire Giant now under siege by SK, and I'm pretty sure Dignitas know they can't do anything about this one. This all belongs to SK.
Right call from Dig to not contest this. I think that you are just playing for the Phoenix defense at this point. And the reason that you want to play for that, not only is it better defensively for you because the map geometry favors you, but also because that's going to be 30 seconds from now if you're at your least lucky. If SK decide they want to get a Phoenix right now, if they decide they just want to wipe towers, that's a solid 3 minutes from now, and you get a lot of time to get some much needed farm in that window.
There's a minion wave here for this push. Variety has respawned in time to be a part of the Phoenix defense, and that's why SK Gaming, I think, pull back. They didn't have Belair there, but he has upgraded teleport. He could have joined them if they felt like they were all in on that push, but they will do, as you said, go for these tier 2 towers. And that gives Dig some time to try and at least farm some waves, but there's really not even that much camps up on this side of the map.
Variety's lurking in a good spot. Not on a ward right there, but probably saw him walk in on that top side ward. Like this patience from SK, you don't need to get a Phoenix with this Fire Giant. You just need to get all the towers. That is what this Fire Giant is for.
Sam aggressing on the Cuba Fred, forces Cuba to ambush over the wall. This might force out some beads, but just the last breath for now from Cubo. And Sam for Soccer seems happy with that. They grab the tier 2 in mid and retreat.
Sam still stacking up that Transcendence, but that damage certainly getting better and better for him. Heartseeker probably in the cards a little bit later on. Love the combination of Transcendence and Heartseeker together. Do think that they are a basic necessity together. If you're building, you don't need to build Heartseeker if you build Transcendence, but you kind of need Transcendence if you're going to build Heartseeker. You just need, it's really hard to get to that 400 power threshold. And Heartseeker has some mana, so you're getting even more than the 75 power that's already on it. Feel like if this is a Magi straight into a Heartseeker, Sam's going to be feeling pretty good.
These side lanes, though, Ryan, that's what I'm looking right now. Belair with such a lead over Variety, 4 levels at this point, and then Zapman with about that same amount of lead over Heroin this time. They just were not able to keep up this game. There was a good amount of pressure to Variety, but I mean, what went so wrong for Heroin on the left-hand side? There weren't a ton of ganks on him. Was it just those repeated jungle invades that really pushed him so far back?
Exactly right. It was all those purple buff invades. I mean, I don't know that he got a purple for 5 minutes straight, you know, 7 minutes straight, whatever it was. He spent a lot of time on the back foot. Zap was able to push some creeps under tower, it felt like. But this is also just, at some degree, I'll bet you it comes down to dual lane experience. I mean, Zap knows exactly when his back timers are going to be up. Not that Heroin doesn't, but he just has literal years on playing that lane. Heroin has a couple months. If even that, it might be a month and a half. You know, it's just, you learn how to maximize that farm over a long period of time. And whether it was that or just the buff invades, doesn't really matter too much. It's that Dignitas' 3v3 got crushed again in mid, and that just can't keep happening.
Yeah, Ataraxia is not impressed so far this set from where I'm sitting, regardless of what pick it is that they seem to put him on. Even with Trixtank there have been times where he's died with his Geb literally right there next to him, man. And I don't know how much that's on Ataraxia, but the end result is the same in that they just haven't been able to get much out of their Hunter player that they put into the middle lane. It just hasn't been there.
I mean, Paul's been playing this like it's a ranked game, honestly. He was on the tower line the entire early game, and no one came to stop him.
That's when Paul's at his best, by the way, I think.
Yes, agreed. I mean, when Paul is allowed to play like he is so much better than you, which is, he plays that all the time, by the way. That's why he's so good. He always plays the same way, and I think that's the sign of a really good player.
I agree.
It's really difficult to stop him.
You do have to respect your opponent, but when you give them credit for everything, they always get credit for everything. Paul's one of those players that makes you prove it, I think. And I think that more times than not, that kind of play will work out for you just in aggregate over time.
Agreed. You have to play with that borderline of confidence versus arrogance. I mean, you need to really feel that way in your play at all times, that you'll be able to outplay them here. They won't be expecting me to land everything, you know, whatever it is. It served Paul well in his career, I think, and as it has a lot of players.
Yep. Not just Paul by any means. Old Zapman played very much that same way. Nowadays, a bit more measured, but can certainly still turn on that gas if need be. As SK Gaming, this last few minutes of slow farming may have felt that way, but they're just waiting on this next Fire Giant to come up. As you said, there was no need for them to do a Phoenix push there.
It's only 23 minutes. I mean, it has not been long.
You're right.
It feels like, you know, this is a 30
I would have
pluser.
guessed 29 minutes if you had covered it.
Yep. I mean, it is tough right now because it's so early for Dignitas. They've gotten levels, at least, and SK's not getting many more levels across their team. Only Sam needs 1, Neil needs 5. So, could be worse, I guess.
Sam is going to try and aggress here on the Kivo Fred to make sure he's zoned out. Won't quite catch up to him, so he doesn't end up hurting them too much. But that is the Fire Giant on all 5 members. No Tier 2 towers up. The only good news is that Ataraxia is going to push up 1 wave over here and left, but I don't even know how impactful that is if SK can get this short side lane pushed up as well alongside this mid wave. They've already got pushed. They don't even need it. They're pushing right into the Phoenix right away. Not a ton of Phoenix damage yet, but they jump in on the Trixtank and pull him back at the Ragnarok, and he melts. Paul gets the kill right away.
Sam for Soccer way in the back line. He's in trouble. He'll fall to that Phoenix damage, but he put them in a great spot to follow up.
That's perfect. I don't know if there's any way that could have gone better except for Sam living, obviously, but he did exactly what they wanted. That's the mid-Phoenix. That's 2 picks. And SK considering just a straight-up end push at this point. They're so far ahead, why not? Dare Dignitas to step up and try and defend. The Titan's still relatively healthy at this point, and SK might finally have to back off a bit. But no, they caught Ataraxia. Rising Jaguar comes out, and now SK will slow down.
Oh, that burst damage from Paul was nuts onto Heroin. Trixtank survives and respawns. All right, boys, maybe another side Phoenix. No, they still want it.
3 Cataclysm members hit there by Trixtank. Great initiation that brought Paul down low. Axe buys him a minute to reposition, but Rising Jaguar from Ataraxia is enough damage for Zapman to drop. Dignitas hold on this time, and SK Gaming get ahead of themselves.
Belair in trouble, but level 20 Osiris. Ultimate's not going to be up for a while, and that Prot Tread should do the job. Heroin's able to get a big bounty right away, level 20 off of it. That is concerning for SK. They have still a enormous lead. I mean, just embarrassingly big. But that call to go for the end instead of just wiping Phoenix is a bit concerning.
Well, every chance you give Dignitas is certainly scary. And what was it you said earlier? Dig kind of hoping SK do something similar to what they did in game number 1. It's definitely not as bad, obviously. This is not an end push from Dignitas, I don't believe. But
are they even going to get a tier 1?
It doesn't. I mean, they'll get this tier 1 in mid, I'm saying with a question mark. But
okay.
yeah, but this is definitely scary. You don't want to give Dig a chance to get their heads right. You always say, especially with like a rhythm shooter or someone who's not feeling it mentally, you just need to see one go in.
Yep.
And then that's when things can start to get back on track. You don't want to get Dignitas feeling good again if you can help.
Like tier 1 did go down. Paul's in trouble. No relics.
He certainly is. They catch him with the flank underneath. The Variety gets the kill credit. Sanctified Field is used to stop the push there. I know they lost Paul, but still not the end of the world. We're 2 minutes from another Fire Giant spawning. Dig are not going to be able to get much else aside from that. But every bit they started whittling away here at SK has certainly helped.
Oni Fury's going to go SK's way if they decide to pull it. They don't have the information that we do that Dignitas is willing to give this up.
Oh, you're right.
Seems like they're going to play it awfully
safe. Even with a Sentry and all this warding, I'm surprised. They've got good information.
It's really that Zapman has no ult and no relics. Now that he has beads, they might have thought about it, but with no beads or Aegis or Sanctified Field, that is an awfully underwhelming Ola run in comparison to at full strength. May as well wait for Paul. Plus, you kind of want this Oni wave to be coming as you're starting to pull Fire Giant. You want it to put some pressure. So you can really afford to wait. If you just get Oni Fury right now, what does it really do for you? I mean, Dignitas spreads out.
The wave pushes all the way up so Dig get free farm.
Sure, exactly. So you don't really want that at this point. Wait until Paul's back up. Wait until his relics are back up. Fire Giant's in about a minute. So as soon as Fire Giant falls off Neil, we can pull Oni. By the time that those waves get to Phoenix, we'll have fire. That's kind of the game plan, I imagine.
I think that's not a bad idea, and I think you've got the right read, because SK has maintained control of this left-hand side ever since, trying to make sure this timing suits them. Dignitas, though, showed us some signs of life. I'm still willing to give more credit to a mistake from SK than Dig particularly playing that one well. I think that in-call might have been a bit too ambitious, and they did lose Sam early. I know he made it a trade, but they would have liked to keep him alive there. They still are definitely favored in these next couple of fights.
15K lead at 27 minutes. Phoenix still down, no doubt. I guess they're waiting until Fire is right about to spawn, because this is pure timing now from SK. They know that they could have taken this Oni Fury whenever they wanted.
Yep.
They want it as close to Fire spawn as they can while still staying in position on that side of the map.
Yeah, they're waiting even now.
They were waiting for their last Fire wave to spawn, it looked like, before they got the Oni wave.
Yeah, this last wave won't be Fire. It'll be an Oni behind the Fire.
Interesting.
I like that.
That's cool. I like that idea. I mean, you put an X, because now maybe Dignitas thinks, okay, we got the last Fire wave, we're fine. Forget about the Oni wave in mid potentially and end up getting punished for it.
This Fire Giant largely will go uncontested. Variety's nearby, but I doubt there's much he can do. Yeah, he's not even going to try. That is the FG for SK Gaming, and they can start to make their push. Remember, that mid-Phoenix, even though it's up, is going to be really weak. If that's where they want to make their push with that Oni wave, they certainly can.
Great spot for SK to be in. I mean, I love this idea of pushing pressure on the right. This is the only wave where the Oni wave didn't get cleared. So you want to use it to your advantage.
They're going to call Neomaw's already in, as is Belair. Ragnarok almost immune there by Trixie, but they're going to pull him back in and blow him up right away. But this is where things went a bit awry. It was that second level of engage from SK. They got to stay level-headed.
But Sam for Soccer this time much safer. Frenzy popped, can blink, but instead is going to go on Variety.
Yeah, and this right side Phoenix melting. Dignitas can't get into position without Trix Tank this time, and SK playing it much better, much slower, and trying to force Dig to make bad decisions. I like this from Cubo, but he gets spotted out. No one will be caught off guard.
Mid-Phoenix so weak already.
Yep.
This should be a walk in the park.
Neomaw jumps in, Variety stunned. There'll be Sam for Soccer that goes into Ataraxia yet again, but this time the poke comes at a much cheaper cost. They are able to grab that mid-Phoenix, and this is starting to look real bad for Dignitas now. Just one Phoenix defend. They forced the Lord of the Afterlife out defensively for Belair, but that's not very much to hang your hat on.
Good idea. I mean, that would have been a nice pick for Team Dignitas, but do not end up finding it too quick on that Lord of the Afterlife, too late on the Fearless from Variety to keep the CC chain going. SK should have a decent amount of gold in the pocket, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, everyone is full build on their side. Yeah, over 2K there for Sam. Everyone has over 2K. But that's kind of irrelevant at this point, as they don't have that many items to buy. It's upgrading relics, it's getting a power pot or two. May as well stay out and use these fire waves. Don't give a chance to Dignitas to push them out too far.
Looks like Neil is close to a mantle. That's a pretty big deal if he can get a mantle finished off and get that big proc. But as you said, they're already so far ahead, they likely don't need, you know, these small margins in order to win these fights if they're playing them correctly. They got plenty of time on this Fire Giant buff as well for this left side siege. Variety way over on the right. Remember, he did not get teleport this game, so he's going to have to walk over manually if he wants to defend, as the Phoenix takes a ton of damage from Zapman here early. That's good arcane stance damage from Hurry, though.
No beads on Paul. That's the big cooldown you got to worry about. Variety's going to be hunting him.
He's looping around underneath the back. There's the Darkest of Nights. A good time to initiate, but no one on Dig pulls the trigger. But it did their job. It kind of forced Sam into a defensive Typhoon there.
No ward behind them. Variety's going to be looking for Paul, and he's hugging the wrong wall.
Neil jumps in aggressively early, and Paul is certainly the target. He's stuck in the CC chain. Last breath there as well, and Paul melts like butter. That's the Sanctified Field out from SK Gaming as well. And it looks like that was enough to where SK are kind of hanging back a little bit now, afraid to push up.
Zapman loses the beads. I think if Zap has beads, they stay. Because look at all the fire waves coming in. I mean, Dignitas has to go over and defend those. They decide to leave that left side Phoenix alone. It's such a tough balance to strike as backliners on Phoenix sieges like that, because you cannot be on top of one another. Zapman and Paul have to be on opposite sides of the Phoenix siege, because you can't both get hit by the same Cobra's Kiss or Cataclysm or anything like that. But that means that someone has their back turned to the wrong area. And the only way you can fix that is by bringing an extra sentry. And with you starting right and then transitioning over to the left, it's hard to have all of that area covered in sentry wards, and that's what really ruins the fight for SK.
And Dig are getting closer and closer to that point where these fights are going to be pretty strong for them. They've got the Chen's Titan's Bane there for Ataraxia. The Obshard Soul Reaver for Whirlwind is finished up. Some of these key power spike items are done for Dig. And so the gold lead's still massive, obviously. But the later this goes, the more that SK can't quite close the door, the less that it matters.
Agreed. I mean, this is now a potential for what we saw Dignitas have happen to them in Game 1, where if they get a clean team fight and they wipe SK, they can win from this position. This is a winnable game now for Dignitas, where it really was not 10 minutes ago. It really felt like that it was over at that point. SK still, I mean, a 90+% favorite.
Yep.
But the door is open for Dignitas.
SK are no longer pushing with the Fire Giant buff. If they're going to make this push, it'll be the old-fashioned way, trying to bait Dignitas to a bad fight. And this is really about letting these minions push in on the weakened Phoenixes, while Dignitas have to be over and left to defend this Phoenix.
Sam's going to get this right side Phoenix. That's gone. Belair will get mid Phoenix as well if no one rotates in quickly enough. Cubo and Variety are here, but Belair's got a full fire wave behind him.
And they're threatening left Phoenix. Such a good call from SK, even without that FG buff. They do grab the mid Phoenix and the left. That's all three down. But Herwin finds Zapman. Sam losing the trade to Cubo and dies to the poison. But as long as that's it, SK need to book it out of here. That's still worth it for them.
Now, what can Dignitas get off this back end? They need something. I just don't know how much they'll be able to get because their Titan's already at half HP. If Dig go for fire right here, they might just lose, because SK minions could get it done. If someone sticks around from SK, they could backdoor from this health with one wave very, very easily.
That's right. That's why Dignitas are in such a tough position here about where they try and go to get something back in the back end of these fights. SK are still only 3 members up, and it looks like that is the call from Dig. They're going to try and grab this Fire Giant right here and now, and SK have a right side minion that's pretty far up, so if they can keep Dignitas stalled, this can still be a good fight for them.
Variety's the one tasked with defending the base, but even he's on the way over. That right side wave is the one to keep an eye on. And Dignitas' side, they can't go for it. It's also scary because there isn't perfect ward coverage, it looks like, on that left-hand side for Dignitas. So maybe Paul or someone could have snuck up that left-hand side and been able to just outright end the game. So that forces SK, or Dignitas rather, back to their base.
That's tough. Dick don't get a lot out of that. Now, it's worth noting, Herwin finished the Ethereal Staff in this time that he was allotted. The Odysseus Bow came out for Ataraxia. There are a couple items that did get purchased to add some extra relevance here for Dignitas. It's not a full waste. And they're here for the defense of the Fire Giant. This might be a bit risky. Cubo Fred is forced to ambush away here on the right-hand side, but SK, they're not fighting the FG at all. They want to take this fight here in the jungle where Dignitas are out of position. Variety being hunted down by Sanford Soccer forces the Lawbringer over the wall.
Typhoon doesn't get a whole lot as Paul continues to harass Fred. Fred's gonna waste a lot of time here and delay these minion waves. This is good for Dignitas.
This isn't bad at all. Paul is going to look to hunt down Cubo Fred here, and I don't think there's a world where Cubo Fred makes it out. This is just a time-wasting excursion. Now that Sanford Soccer is down here as well, being chased down, forced to use the last breath for some damage that won't be relevant. He will indeed end up falling. What about the fight elsewhere? Remember, he pulled 2 members over, but it's still not enough. Trickstank falls out of the Sanctified Field. Zapman late on beads, but Aegis buys him time, and Variety having to chase. Belair gets Ataraxia stunned, and Zapman makes it out. This might be it for Dig.
For Zapman still able to keep out of Variety's range. Knockback is good as well, and minions can take care of it if SK don't feel like getting their hands dirty. SK up 2-0 over a reeling Dignitas.
And there's the surrender from Dig. They were right. At that point, there was no way they could win. It was just a matter of watching SK push up. And if you all bet on SK to be up 2-0 here in this set from Dignitas, then I'd like to offer you a firm handshake, because I don't think you could have predicted that it would look like this.
Yeah, maybe come to the casino with me or something like that, because you're riding hot on those bets for sure. Let me know what's going to happen on the NFL Sunday, because seriously, this is impressive work from SK, and you knew that there was danger of this, I think, for Dignitas coming in. I mean,
much closer than the Obey set, right?
Just on paper, it has to be. And SK has played up against a lot of good opponents. They played well against Renegades recently. That's been the best team in the league. You thought, okay, Dignitas will be refocused. They'll be locked in. They have not been so far. Game 1, they looked good. They've got to figure out a way to start the game better. They cannot afford to be behind. They got the first 2 kills, the only 2 kills on the board, and they were down over 1,000 gold. That can't be happening.
The Dignitas have got to find a way to refocus here in between games 2 and 3. A critical match about to come up after this break. SteelSeries, the official peripheral provider of the SMITE Pro League.
Hunter reporting in. Specimen acquired. I don't know why you put such a high price on these things. They barely put up a fight. I'm en route to the drop point for payment and transfer. I want these things off my ship. I don't trust a job this easy. Hunter over and out. Don't keep me waiting.
Welcome back to this Friday afternoon of the SPL. Week 9 is just coming to its conclusion, or maybe. At the moment, though, if you can see the bottom of the screen, the Odyssey has returned once again. That means the World Championships are right around the corner, but you guys can get yourselves your hands on a new Tier 5 skin. The Baron Tier 5 is available right now. Baron Samedi has a new one available for you all, and it's one of the first times you can purchase it straight from the outset. Make sure you go and have a look into that, see if you're interested. But for now, we're talking all about the SPL this afternoon, and so far, it's Dig versus SK, but it's not going as expected. SK just took down Dig again for the second time in a row. Totally, how?
Honestly, a lot of Bel Air action on the Osiris the early game. Variety on the tier made a risky idea behind going the Blink at level 1. It paid off for them on the first blood, but then since then he was getting abused in the laning phase, and then without teleport he doesn't get the golden experience that he would want.
Great performance from SK overall, though, to find the victory here. Took him a little bit longer than bargained for, though. A couple of close calls we've ended in the game, but Dignitas did hold on. The only thing I did see from watching that game back and seeing the player cams, Dignitas just aren't happy. They're not communicating.
It doesn't feel that way. They're just getting early pressured and they can't adapt to it. And I think their late game draft was fine, right? Tier, Circuit, Merlin, Gep, Shibalanke with the passive for power is good, but it was SK Gaming that got that early to mid game momentum because of the Osiris. Even though Variety makes a level 1 play with the Blink, yes, onto Bel Air's not really behind experience. He doesn't miss out on gold or experience teleporting back to the wave.
And you saw the damage numbers there too, and the one thing about that, this game was nearly 40 minutes in length.
Sure.
And the damage numbers, the highest member on SK was, sorry, on Dignitas was around 20k, which some of the members were under 10, which is kind of crazy when you look at how much fighting was going on. SK did a very good job of nullifying Variety early on the solo lane. And then the 1v1 matchups that developed between Paul and Ataraxia went Paul's way, and Zap versus Horiwin, the same sort of deal.
I mean, that's going to be the case every time an ability hunter goes against a basic attack hunter. The ability one will win the early to mid-game stages. SK drafted that early to mid-game composition, especially with this Fenrir support, and made it work. Not once, but not twice, but multiple times was Neil present into this solo lane, making sure Variety was going to get shut down. This kill led to SK getting the Fire Giant immediately afterwards, but Dignitas did some good defensive stops as well. This is where SK were feeling themselves a little bit too much, the same way they ended game 1. Actually, at this time, they felt confident to go for the end in game number 2, but didn't really predict Variety being such a stopping force with a disarm.
Yeah, I did see the plays between this game 2 and going into game 3, and a little bit of a talk between the Dig boys and SK for a second when they're like, hey, we nearly started coming back in that. We started to win some of those little scrappy fights in the jungle that kind of even things up, but now SK are only one game away from beating Dignitas and sweeping them 3-0.
It would be very impressive to see that. I think Dignitas are on the back foot, unfortunately, this week. It just doesn't feel like it's their week. They lost to Obey yesterday, 2-3 in an epic 5-game set, despite winning that first game. And now they're one game away from losing this one. I mean, like, just look at their faces. You could tell that they're kind of stumped.
There's no conversation. That's what the only thing I'm seeing about this is not even a yelling match going on. There's no actual visual words coming out of any mouths. They're just sat in silence.
Well, they probably already discussed what they needed to do for the next game, and it's probably a very short and simple plan, whatever it was that was discussed.
The one thing I do like about these players, though, their emotions are definitely shown on their faces for the most part. So there's things going on in Camp Dignitas that clearly they're not happy with their performances. Rightly so, you know, losing to Obey yesterday. Now they're 2 games down to SK. And SK are a step up from Obey, as we've seen how the years progressed. Dignitas will be first pick.
And the thing was, when these teams faced off about 4 months ago, it was an epic 5-game set, but it was Dignitas that walked away with it in a 3-2. So looking at how SK were able to turn the tides already in phase number 2, a great improvement, and especially when they can draft an early game and still outplay Dignitas, it's making it look like SK Gaming are definitely ready for Hi-Res Expo, whether or not they make it as a top 6 team.
So now we get a big switch up. With Dig being first pick this time, they don't have to ban Isis, Set, and Persephone. That might be SK's job, and so far it's leading that direction. Dig, meanwhile, can take away the Oleron, make sure Zap doesn't get his hands on that, can take away the Ul, make sure Paul doesn't get his hands on that, and take away the Fenrir. So Dignitas are like, what have SK played? And that's, this word's being spoken.
There definitely
I saw some words.
They need to communicate what they're going to first pick after this set ban. Could be a Thor pick, I wouldn't be surprised. Kiva Fred has played that the most so far in phase number 2.
I don't think SK are really too worried at the moment, though, with how this has gone so far. Dig with the first pick of Hercules here, more than likely towards Trickstack.
Did not expect the Hercules first pick. This is a shot at Nilma as well. It's not only the Fenrir ban, but it's first picking this Hercules.
Agreed. I also think that's just Trick saying, give me something aggressive now. I don't want to play Geb again. I feel like his Geb performance that game was a little bit lackluster, but it was hard to get into that game anyway. but this time he's more aggressive again with his hook.
But he's setting up the counter matchup of Serket versus Hercules. The last breath, 100% anti-healing. Hercules not going to be able to mitigate those wounds. Could be a good opportunity to abuse Trick's tank, whether it's a Geb or the Hercules.
And now with Thor selected, Thor's still flexible to solo. We've seen a little bit more recently, mainly from solo or troll for Splice. But it will be potentially in Belair's God Pull if required. More than likely, though, I think that's going to be Sam in the jungle on that Thor and Serket for Neil Ma.
Yeah, there was a lot of mind games between Neil and Trick's tank. I remember one time when Neil dove the right side Phoenix to proc the Mad-Guy's Cloak onto Trick's tank's Geb, and then he Ragnaroks, waits out the Cataclysm to abduct the Geb and bring him outside the Phoenix for a very early kill, which is why I'm assuming the Serket is going support for Neil.
More aggression coming out from Dignitas too. Osiris, big lane bully there this time for variety. And a tough selection, something we've not seen too much of. Could be going to the hands of both Nate or Horrywind here. We'll see where that develops to. But AMC, someone that's slowly fallen from grace, had a couple of nerfs, but still seen the pro level as being very viable and something that Paul likes to play a lot of in that mid lane.
If you're looking for an ability hunter and you don't have Ullr because it's banned, AMC is a hot second pick. Despite the nerfs like you mentioned, it's still great at outpushing any mage early game, especially training those basic attacks. But for some reason, I'm thinking that the Thoth is going to go to Horrowind's hands, but I don't want to see it being played in the long lane against Zap.
Kivo getting some focus bans yet again in the Caliban phase. Cabrakan and Hornbats one more time. Belair this time will select the King Arthur, which will definitely tell us the Thor is going to be in the jungle this time round. And that results, actually, in Kivo Fred selecting the Raven. More aggression. This is a brutal dive comp from Dig and having tough to artillery the backline. And also select a Soul here. Soul back in focus from the pros here. It's 2 games today.
It's the safety factor with the Disapparate. You're able to peel for yourself for a moment's notice, not forever, but that's the idea behind such an aggressive front line with Herc, Osiris, Robin. So your backline at a Dig needs to peel for themselves.
If you're Zhonghui here, which is going to be Zapman, I'm expecting, on this Zhonghui in the long lane, who is it you want to go against? Is it the Soul or the Toth we're expecting there?
I'd rather face probably the Soul. Thoth is going to be too safe. You can never really all-in commit onto a Thoth as long as the dash is up.
So but if you can go Blink, then I guess. I get the idea of the Soul, definitely. Disapparate does come into play a little bit, but still you're going to take some damage as the Disapparate's being warmed up, because it takes a couple of seconds to tick through. Interesting compositions. A dive comp from Dig. Let's see how this works out.
An aggressive composition here from Team Dignitas. If they go down, it will not be sitting on their hands here in Game 3. A must-win for Team Dignitas, it feels like now, because they've just been kind of collapsing here this week. They need to start turning this set around right here, but I'm a bit worried. I don't know that there's much cohesion. It just feels like a bunch of really strong picks, but there's not much CC. What's the plan here for Dig?
Hope that you all do what you've done your whole careers, which is just outplay your opponents a whole lot. I mean, every single one of these guys has been very, very successful in their SPL careers for a reason. That being said, I think SK Gaming is in a really good spot to sweep them here. I mean, this composition can be very good.
It's so
Their
good.
team fight is incredible. I mean, it doesn't have the normal things you'd expect out of a great team fight comp. It doesn't have an Athena or a Geb or anything like that. It's really just this potential for these big AoE damages out of Zapman and out of Paul and out of Sam. Those three are going to do so much damage in the early game that I think that it might be enough.
This could be good, though, if Kivo Fred's able to find a nice bit of an engage here. But if he's just going to walk in the lane, this is more about grabbing some farm than anything and helping Horrowwind try and get some push power on this left-hand side of the map. Meanwhile, Sanford Soccer is down on the order side, red buff, stripping that one away. Neil Ma was aggressive on the jungle. I'm not sure if he stole that speed. Looks like no.
He did. He got it. Yeah, he
got
stole Dignitas' speed while Trix stole SK's speed.
Gotcha.
The support started at each other's speed buffs.
Able to strip those away, and now he's here on the order side, blue buff as well. So SK Gaming have been aggressive in the jungle here so far.
Both solo laners lost their blue to the enemy supports as well, so that's fun for them. It looks like Trix actually going to come and share a little bit of this wave with Variety, whereas Neil is really just playing jungle 2 right now in the enemy jungle. He got speed, he got blue, he got backs. He had the full jungler rotation in the early stages.
Oh, this could be trouble for Ataraxia. He does have this Disapparating. If the hammers aren't hitting, then that's a pretty good recipe to make it back out of there. So Thank you, Sam, for soccer on that one.
Tough. It's a tough spot to hit, especially with Ataraxia having that extra bit of movement speed with the disapparate. But you certainly force him out of lane a little bit. Trixtank's lurking, and Neil's only level 1. If Neil was 2, that might be a dead Hercules.
Instead, Driving Strike allows him to reposition. Sam's going to come back up into the jungle and find some farm there, despite Trixtank being there a little bit earlier. It looks like he wasn't able to clean all of that up and had to disengage. No speed up there for him to get, but this has been a bit of an interesting early game. They've kind of swapped these jungles, as that's the Driving Strike down, so Neil goes in aggressive. Doesn't quite have enough damage though, and now he might pay. Cubo Fred blink in to the root, and Ataraxia finds first blood.
It couldn't have drawn it up any better if you were Dignitas for how to get off to a better start in this game, where you're playing the side lanes a little bit better, it feels like to me. You've got a little bit of a better grasp of what's happening over here, and you put down Neil in the early game, and you set Cuvo and Ataraxia and Trixtank ahead. You're mid 3v3, where I think you have struggled pretty mightily so far in this set. Gets off to a much better lead this time around.
It's worth mentioning with this start, Trixtank's gone right into the Talaria boots here this time, as Herwin might be getting a bit baited. He's got to be careful, which means no Guardian's Blessing for him, just like we saw Mineral use all day yesterday. But Herwin seems to have sensed this, is starting to back up a little bit, but no, he's moving back in. He could still be susceptible here to a Neil Ma engage. No blink, though.
No blink is a big deal. Gonna have to really keep his head on a swivel and realize Zap, again, tips him off a little bit, but has to be in position to follow up at the same time. So it's a tough balance to find.
Looks like not much there from Neil. He should be able to at least strip away the purple buff. Meanwhile, Dignitas taking the Chaos side blue buff as well. I'll take that one to try and limit some of this mana regen for King Arthur. And that's a big deal. King Arthur reliant on spamming abilities here in the soul lane, so if they can keep that on cooldown, they can limit some of his effectiveness.
That's okay that Belair's lost 2 in a row. That hasn't gotten a blue buff yet, but I think Sam needs to be there for the next one.
Yep.
And that is critical. One of the easiest ways Dignitas wins games in this league is just getting Variety fed and getting him ahead and setting him up to win the whole game for his team. It would be, I think, a big mistake to just completely ignore that side of the map.
I like this though, man. Instead of like trying to maybe pick and ban in a way where SK can't run over them early, Dignitas just took the gloves off, it feels like, and now they're here to throw down in the early game as well. Are they prepared to come out on top in that situation, though, is a question that I have to ask them. It looks like they are. Trixtank on this Hercules has been active, so has Cubo Fred. So far, it's been good.
Only lane that's struggling so far is Herwind on the Thoth. Takes a little bit of time for him. It's clear to ramp up. Makes sense to me. He should be okay once he hits level 6, level 7. Hieroglyphic Assault is maxed, and you're in a much better spot. In that moment, Zapman will start to eat a lot more poke than he'll be able to heal through, I think.
And he did share that first wave, if I remember correctly. I think Cubo Fred's kind of walked up and cleared it with him, just to try and give him some push pressure against Zapman, knowing that the Zhonghui would probably be able to come out on top. So, you know, not surprising, I don't think, that Her went a little bit behind over here in the long lane so far.
This is a good spot for Sam. He's just gotten his speed, can head on over to this blue buff right away. It's going to be up very soon. Looks like Trixtank's standing in mid so that he can easily rotate over towards that side of the map. Sam clearly staying on this right side. This is going to be a dedicated blue buff invade.
Yeah, Neil Ma's lurking on left here too. SK Gaming have a ward there that's not belonging to Dig, so they might not know he's over there. But I feel like there hasn't been that many level 5 ganks anymore from our junglers like there used to be. Like right when you ticked 5, it used to be important to use that cooldown. Doesn't feel that way much anymore as Sam does rotate to blue buff, but actually does secure it a little bit too early from Trix on the Driving Strike.
Yeah, yep, just tiny bit too early. The fact that it stays there and gets pushed against the wall and not deeper into the blue hurts. It's really the fact that he thought Sam was going to auto-attack one more time. Instead, Sam turned and tried to stun him. Knew that it was coming, and no ward vision from Sam. That's just knowing that that's a possibility and reacting to the blink sound.
Good job there from Sam. I said that there weren't ganking at level 5 anymore. It's because you got to be there for stuff like blue and defending your your buffs nowadays with some of these aggressive supports. And Sam does a good job to be there as Neil continues to wait it out, but can't quite find any gank opportunity. He might have just been soaking some farm from that spot.
Level 5 for both supports, and Neil Ma has plenty of aggressiveness as Cubo Fred in trouble.
Repositions, but reads it perfectly in this Neil Ma, and so that means Sam can go elsewhere with the Anvil of Dawn. It's Ataraxia, who still had to separate. Such a safe tool for these souls, but uh-oh, Sam gets pulled back in, has to use the beads. Ataraxia Supernova was there for the follow-up, but obviously the beads meant no dice.
Still the right call by Ataraxia to follow up on that. That's how you got to play. Assume they're not going to have it in that spot. A lot of times you have to assume they do, but there, I mean, will you need Supernova in the next 65 seconds? Almost certainly not. It's the right call to make sure he gets punished if he gets greedy with the beads. But a good pick from SK. Set Sam for Soccer a little bit ahead of Cuvo Fred, even with that start for Fred now a little bit behind.
I like you defending these mid laners, following up though, Aggro, as a former
Listen, man,
high-level guy yourself.
I used to get yelled at all the time. Chach would taunt someone, they wouldn't beads or something like that for some reason, even though they definitely had them and they should have been beadsing, and I don't raw snipe off of it, and I get yelled at, and I'm like, hey man, why didn't he just beads? And I got the lecture every week. Eventually it got into my head though. It was, I'll never get mad at you for following up off my CC that I should be hitting or that I hit. I will get mad if you don't. And that I learned.
It eventually gets in there as Dignitas get in there to the blue buff. They rotated almost 4 members over to make sure they stole it this time, and Sam was elsewhere on the map. So there was really no way for him to be there to help out with Belair on that defense. They lose it on the Chaos side this time. Sam has been somewhat active, but still not quite as much as you might have expected. There's that one attempt on Ataraxia's life in the middle lane that did not bear fruit as Neil just holds down W and chases Trickstick.
Neil's ideal playstyle, by the way.
Exactly. He doesn't have to move his finger off W.
Keep it there, and that's this counter matchup. Serket against Hercules, the anti-heal, great, but it's also the ability to reposition the Hercules once he driving strikes. Really relies on that bit of movement in order to get him out of a lot of sticky situations. If you last breath him in the middle of that or right afterwards, it's really tough for him to handle being that far into the enemy team without the ability to heal.
Blink engage, though, from Neil Ma, looking for Trickstank. Trickstank is able to reposition a good bit. They don't have quite enough damage. They found a nice stun there. I think that was Sam, and that sets up for him to come in with the hammer and clean up the Hercules.
Yeah, Paul just late on the stinger right there, and that's where you got to be following up off that CC, because you know he has no options in that spot available to him whatsoever.
But Sam wants more. He goes up at the Anvil of Dawn. This is all about a red buff this time, but he's a bit far forward on his own. Now Neil Ma comes into the picture, but Cubo Fred was right there waiting, goes up over him with that Mystic Rush, and that's a nice clean kill for Cubo Fred. But now he's low, and Zapman has shown up. Overhead kick is almost enough, but Paul cleans the kill.
1 for 1. You get Herwin's beads out as well as his ultimate. Sam didn't have ward coverage, just kind of whipped that ultimate. Could have found a 2-man there, I felt like, but just too deep. Know that's a hard one without the ward vision, but got to expect a little bit more in that spot, I think.
I agree. Sam not able to find quite enough that time on the ultimate, so they don't really end up getting the buff invade or winning the fight outright. They did get a pick in mid right before that, I believe, so it ends up being
at the end of the day, I mean,
favor.
It's 2 for 1 in SK's favor if you count Trix's death, and you got beads out from Herwin at the same time, so it's still not bad.
Trickstank taking some poke there too from Paul, who's been aggressive this game on the Amuzin Cobb. I feel like Amuzin Cobb hasn't been getting quite valued enough. I know he got, some nerfs, quite some substantial ones with the way Bees interacts with like the Mage's Blessing, but still certainly potent.
Yeah, I don't know,
Not a
man.
believer, huh? Okay.
That is a huge nerf. And it's not just that, it's that his Stinger also got nerfed pretty heavily. I mean, It was a good amount of base damage and scaling. So you get double whammied on the Stinger and on the Bees. I think this god is still good, but I don't know if he's top pick, top ban. I think this is where you want it. I mean, we're running it down mid in our 3v3. We want to invade red. We want to get ahead early. AMC still does very well there. I don't think he's he's open, we got to pick him.
Trickstank could be in trouble. He's been pulled back, and last breath means no healing. Stinger there this time from Paul, and Trickstank now takes yet another spill. SK have clearly made him the focus, and good timing, too, as they can get Oracle Vision and even potentially make a play on Gold Fury. But maybe not. Instead, they'll push out Hurl.
Interesting choice from Trix to go back in with that driving strike. Maybe got turned around off of the Cobra's Kiss. Felt like he maybe could have gotten something started, that he wasn't going to live, but Sam had already expended the hammer. Paul can't close that gap very easily. I think I would have liked to see Trix try and driving strike out in that instance.
I like Sam going for poke onto Ataraxia before the red buff invade to try and make him a little bit less lucky to come out, but instead Ataraxia is able to weave in that stellar burst there and strip away the red buff. But Trixtank yet again being focused. This time, though, no last breath for Neil, so he's okay.
Sovereignty will come out soon, but I think you're really seeing how much not having Guardian's Blessing really hurts Trixtank. I mean, he's not getting that passive gold. Look at his net worth. Down 800 gold right now, and he only had 2 deaths, and Neil's had 1. It's not like he can't play.
Wow, they are willing to all-in commit here on the Trixtank every single time. Driving Strike this time, though, does get him out of there, even with that stinger from Paul. And without a red buff being up, they needed that pick for that to be worth their engagement. That's the dash from Hurry.
No mana for Sam, though, and Neil in trouble. Final judgment. Perfect timing by Herwin. Read the Deathbane the whole way. Perfect.
Sure.
You gotta give the man a little bit of credit there.
I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't. It was definitely a good shot, but I mean, obviously, with Neil's back to it, it's much harder to juke on the Deathbane. And kind of, he has to gamble in a direction there, and I think he ends up coming back into it. So. Good shot, obviously, from Herwin. Good play. I don't evade and punish aggressively in there, so he's clearly got the reads.
The mid lane hate on this casting team is disgusting. It's disgusting. You guys are the worst.
That is going to be a red buff secure for Dignitas, not an invade here this time. Dignitas in a much better spot. I do want to make sure that we say that clearly. This has been a rough set and a rough overall week. Yep. So Dignitas has kind of fought their way back into some relevance here in this game. SK has still played well. They still have a very slight lead, but Dignitas right there with them this time, which is actually, I think, a pretty big deal.
And Variety still has a slight edge over Belair over there in the solo lane based off that earlier blue buff invader too. Belair's been holding his own since then and is about half a level down at this point, but that's big. The Variety might be able to come in and make a big impact.
Further aggression, though, from this 3v3 for SK Gaming, and Trixtank stays the target. He's been forced out. Paul been willing to commit the stinger almost every time Trixtank has showed his face, and that's part of what's made life so difficult, is red buff defended by Dignitas again.
Neil able to get one small one, I believe, there. Don't think he got the main buff. That would be a real tilt for Dignitas if he did, but did not. Herwin's able to pick it up. I mean, Cubo was down earlier. Now he's actually got a level lead over Sam because Sam has spent so much time dedicated on this left-hand side to try and get the rest of the team ahead. And that's what you do. You take your small leads and you try and transition them throughout the team. I don't think Sam's been misplaying at all by going aggressive on this left-hand side, but it's allowed Cubo to get some much-needed farm.
And with this game being this even throughout the early game, and early game basically done here at this point, where do we start to see these teams stack up in the mid to late? As Belair under siege, a little bit more than under siege. He is in trouble. Finds up a two-man stun, and the knock-up avoids the sickle. Belair still being chased, though, by Variety.
Oh,
he divides some hits.
No.
He dodges them and gets the sustain
Not
up
like
the glass
this,
shield.
bro.
And Variety in trouble. In comes Sam
like
for
this.
sucker, and Variety gets used up.
Man, that is brutal. Both of them die because Neil Ma's there as well to clean up Cubo. Now Trick's like, hey, boys, you mind if I give myself a shot at this one? That is tough, bro, to lose both members right there. That one really hurts. It's so rare to see that 2v2 of Fred and Variety not pull off something perfectly.
Yeah, that is brutal, man. And I think at that point, that's more mental damage than like any gold or experience number here in the game. Is to struggle on that play there. Herwin can't get in thanks to good zoning from Neilma, and Gold Fury belongs to SK. But I mean, that's so tough to commit to that kill for so long and not be able to pick it up.
The one lead that I was like, yeah, this is going well, you know, we're in a good spot, it's gone now. And that Gold Fury opened up because of it. That really gives SK the first big lead of the game. They've had the momentum in this game, I'd say, but not in the numbers. Now they've got it in the numbers as well as in the momentum. And it's at the cost of Dignitas's morale, right? That's where it really hurts. You're not generating it out of nowhere. You are stealing it from Team Dignitas. The small lead that Cubo had earned after being behind early, he worked his way back. Now Sam's got an edge on him again. I can only imagine how frustrated Dignitas is. I know I would be if I were in their shoes.
It's so difficult, I think, to not be at this point because they have such high expectations for themselves. As Zatman stole a red buff a moment ago just now. You saw that, and Zhonghui makes his way back out. I mean, it's these kind of small things that start to add up to a 3-0. I think when good teams lose like this, it doesn't happen all at once. It is this sort of whittling down process, and we might be looking at it now as Trixtank yet again is the focus. Only this time Belair is here to add to it.
Sam in the sky, gonna be looking for Trix Tank. Finds Ataraxia, not bad.
Hammer's not quite enough for the kill, so Trix Tank is able to make it back out of there. Final Judgment gets immune by the Aegis, but Hugo Fred wants to try and turn things around. Supernova brings Neil down low, and Dignitas turn what should have been a really bad fight into a good one, even though they don't get any kills. And Belair, where's he teleporting? Back to lane, okay.
Just wanted to get out. Wondered if they saw Variety on that rotation and realized that might not be able to just walk out the other way. Nope. Nope. Blinked though for Variety. Instead he goes for the Horrific. Very good against Zhongqi and AMC.
Should be able to keep them locked down well. I wonder if a sprint might come out as Paul losing this trade to Variety, but it's a bit of a bait. They had the Circuit coming back in, Aegis to immune the Lord of the Afterlife, and Variety forcing it at this point. I mean, in a 1v3, I understand he might be able to get a kill there, but that felt forced.
It did, and I don't think that he needs to be zoning at their underneath their tier 2 for Dignitas to get the Pyromancer at the same time. I think that's just taking him off the map. Got both relics out from Paul. That's a win. Maybe Dignitas can capitalize on that.
Irwin low on mana, but with just Neil here and no last breath, it should be okay. Belair aggressing on Ataraxia. He does have some help coming in the form of Hugo Fred, but I think Belair can keep this aggression going. No beads to get him out of this. All the damage is there, but Belair finally bites off more than he can chew. Hugo puts that one to bed.
Both solo laners feeling generous today, it seems like. Giving away a couple kills to the opposition. Really don't want to get Ataraxia on the board and get him rolling on this Soul, who I think Ataraxia's actually played this game pretty well. I think this has been his best game of the set so far. He's been able to stay pretty safe. I like the idea of putting him on something nice and safe, but also able to put out relevant damage. Third on the player damage on his team, right in the middle of the pack. That's been a problem sometimes for Ataraxia with this transition to mid, where he plays so passively that he can't affect the team fights.
They're a little bit of damage short here in this next engage. I remember Zapman couldn't find the card when they first moved in. In fact, Neil's in some trouble. Good blink into the driving strike, and Neil Ma, a distant memory now. Zapman forced to disengage. There's 3 members of Dignitas here. No, make that 4. Zapman, I don't see a world he makes out of this one. Supernova on top of it, and Dignitas, by grouping a little bit ahead of SK, has started to find a couple of good fights.
Couple bad ideas by SK. The idea to get aggressive over there. Zap doesn't beads the Earthbreaker from Trix Tank. I don't think he dies if he just uses beads on that Herc pull, but ends up waiting until he landed. Maybe didn't realize that Ataraxia was there in tow, but I don't think they needed his damage that much.
Tier 2 tower under threat now for Team Dignitas on the right-hand side. Belair not enough to defend. That's huge that Dignitas find just not just opening up the map on the right-hand side. That's often a retreat path in Fire Giant fights, but also that gold is desperately needed right now to even this game back up. We've been worried about Dig's mental state, but these last few fights have been pretty strong from them. They're certainly still fighting back in.
Feels like SK is the one that's not staying super strong mentally right now. I feel like they're getting a little bit ahead of themselves. They're probably feeling great up 2-0. They're off to a lead in this game. They're like, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to sweep Dig. Got to stay in your lane. You got to stay at home in this game, and they've given up a couple. Now they've got to reset this. Oni Fury is going to be critical because now it's an even fight.
Yep. That early that they focused so much on, put in Trix Tank behind with repeated gank attempts, stinging him every time he shows up, him not taking the Guardian's Blessing, that's all irrelevant now, I'd say. Trix Tank even a good deal ahead of Neil Ma on this Hercules.
Oni Fury fight really might favor Dignitas here because the only carry without a relic is Zapman, who has no Aegis, and that's a big deal on Zhongqi. Really want the ability to use that Aegis aggressively.
SK still might have the better team fight. Final Judgment here could be huge. Everyone's lined up, and he does indeed hit 3, but it doesn't save Trix Tank's life. Hugo Fred rotates in, but Hurwin's had a good fight so far. That's why Sam for Soccer starts to look for him. Double kill for Ataraxia, and Sam can't hunt down Hurry. This has been a sick fight from this Thoth. I know he wasn't the one getting kills, but Hurry did work.
Perfect fight from Dignitas. If they're going to commit everything into Trix Tank, let's just kill them all. And that's exactly what happens. Now they have to be a little bit worried because Paul's up and with relics, and they don't have great health bars. Cubo being the one to zone makes sense to me.
Man, SK make a couple of bad fights in a row, unforced errors. And even on tilt, it doesn't take much for Dig to start getting back into a game. It looks like they're even going to wait for Trix Tank. I love this. Great recognition of the current state of this game, and they get Fire Giant on all 5 members. Paul was nowhere nearby.
Tough. I don't know, dude. It just feels like a fight that really shouldn't have gone that poorly for SK. They all group up. They're in the exact same area. They get 3-man hit by Whirlwind.
I think Whirlwind had a sick fight.
I completely agree with you. He baits a whole lot there. Loses both relics because Sam has the correct dunk, but still is able to stay safe despite it. Good turnaround and peel from Cubo. Fred able to hold on to that one. But just an overcommit from SK onto Trixtank. He's level 15 now. You cannot afford to be double ulting him every single team fight, especially because it requires you to stay really on top of one another, and that's what's going to punish you more so than using Stinger and Last Breath.
Definitely agree on the back end of that one. Dignitas grabbed the Oni Fury too, which is going to help their push. Remember, they already got that tier 2 tower earlier, so that Phoenix a good bit more exposed. Though Dig might just settle for just opening this map up more and taking some tier 2 towers in these last few fights. But I would have said that SK drafted a better team fight coming into this. But it's just not the case if you line up for multiple man final judgments, if too much stuff is used on the same target, and Dignitas exploit that in that last fight. Now they have a difficult task trying to defend up against this Thoth when they're sieging.
It's what makes this Thoth such a good pick for so many teams, is that you can do a lot of things well, you can have the better comp, but if the Thoth has a good fight, it's hard to win. I mean, it really is that simple. It's one of those dynamic characters that changes the outcome of fights by himself.
SK are a very strong Phoenix defense team, though. I've said that numerous times throughout this set. So only down 6K in defending, I mean, they'll take that one, right? I mean, obviously they'd have preferred they didn't give up their early lead, but this is a team that can refocus under Phoenix's very, very well, even if they are going into a Soul who shreds towers and a Thoth who's good on siege.
Look at that swing. Almost a 5K gold lead just 5-6 minutes ago. Now it's a 7+ thousand gold lead for Team Dignitas. They've got every tower off the map, and that is a little bit concerning because SK, if they were to flip the script and get a team fight win and got some towers, they could even this gold lead up very quickly. All that deficit is really on the map right now for SK Gaming, but it's a lot easier said than done. They've got to find a way to get on top of Whirlwind in these fights. Also Ataraxia, who's put out a lot of damage as well. Those two together, I think, are going to be a tough backline nut to crack.
Agreed. About 5K gold worth down there in those towers to be mined by SK Gaming if they were to find a counter push. But SK need to get set. Dignitas are here and pushed up. They don't have the carries, and they're trying to push out these waves here a little bit, but they need to make sure they're back and in position for when Dignitas line up across from them here at these Phoenixes.
Lots of pen for SK. Their builds tell me they want to go with this kill the front line idea of killing Variety, killing Trixtank right away.
Yeah, they've done
2 Titan's Banes really early. Obsidian Shard nearly done for Zapman. That's in a much more standard spot. But an early Titan's Bane, I'd say, for both Sam and Paul. I don't hate it. Just got to make sure you're not committing too much.
SK have the left side wave all the way pushed up so they can focus on this right side Phoenix defense. They've got every ultimate up, all the relics here. Upgraded Horrific for SK as well. That could potentially be a big deal as Neilmaw blinks in, finds nothing, gets driving strike by Trixtank, and they bring Neil down to half early on. Whirlwind, though, good discipline on the final judgment.
And Paul used the Stinger onto Variety right there, so really good across the board, I'd say, from Team Dignitas. Utilized very little, just Excavate, and that's not a big deal.
And now it's time for the blink in from Trixtank. Push on the Zapman. He pops the Frenzy as well. And the right side Phoenix is already down. Final Judgment brings Paul down to half health by himself. It looks like they might lose Trixtank here, and they do. But trading Trix for a Phoenix, not bad at all.
Don't mind Trix's play whatsoever. He blinks in and just shoves Zapman further away. Now maybe if Zapman pre-beads as the driving strike and starts running in, because Trix is going to be so far behind him at that point, then it's going to be hard to peel him away. That goes pretty well. That's where having this Horrific Emblem on Variety instead of Trixtank makes a lot of sense for Team Dignitas, because you can juggle aggro of that Zhonghui pretty well. Upgraded Horrific, reducing the damage of every single one of those ghosts and dots from Zhong. Really, really hard for Zapman to chew through that.
But this is where pushing up that left side wave is so important for SK. Dignitas had to kind of settle for this right side Phoenix, the easiest one for SK to defend, while also making sure they're here for this Fire Giant in the next 20 seconds. They'll be able to push this wave up a good deal and be local for what's not too bad of a fight. They're certainly down 9K gold. They're going to feel every bit of that, but they've got all this AoE presence from Zapman, from Paul. I still don't think Zapman's had that good of a recall demons yet this game.
Nope.
That could certainly still turn this fight around.
A lot of that, though, is because of the Horrific Emblem from Variety. I mean, the ones that he has gotten off have done very little. I'm looking at Whirlwind in this fight. Just finished off a Shaman's Ring. It's not stacked yet as Paul used Stinger. It doesn't hit home. Thought Neil Ma was going to use Last Breath, I imagine, but ends up not finding it. And that's a big deal. I mean, that Stinger has been used exclusively for Trix Tank so far this game, but it's relevant.
Variety is the frontliner, and they've shown a willingness to all-in commit. He manages to make it back out of there with 60% HP. We'll see if he chooses to go back. Variety's been not buying teleport lately, but he has it fully upgraded this time. So if he does need to go back and get that second health bar, he can.
Irwin dashing forward, Trix Tank, able to absorb some cooldowns, but nothing major. SK doing a good job of staying at home in this team fight. You don't want to push too far forward because if you get caught between the Fire Giant and Fire Minions, it can be difficult to retreat.
Fire Giant down to about half. Neil Ma thoroughly zoned. That is the frenzy popped.
Sam's going up.
So Dignitas won it, but Sam does indeed take this guy. Neil Ma gets horrific onto the back line and stops Irwin from getting off the final judgment. This is a big Aegis from him, but Hurry goes down early. SK gonna keep pushing in, but Neil Ma low, able to reposition, but Zapman and Paul, these two damage dealers can keep surging forward. Gotta watch out though, Zapman took a ton just now.
Ataraxia putting it out. Good big
That's
damage
huge from
right there and just steps too far forward. Sam for Soccer loses the hammer toss, and he's going to lose his life for it.
But Paul is able to find at least one kill. QFred gets a double kill though. That makes it 2 for 2 so far. But QFred quite low and Belair fully healthy can keep going. But great peel from Trix Tank. Stops everything in its tracks. But remember, Dignitas are the team ahead right now. An even fight favors SK.
Right side, Phoenix still down, so Titan still in some trouble. No ultimates here. This seems like a unwise chase to me. I mean, Variety is alone, but you don't know exactly for how much longer.
Yeah, they
Paul
don't know
is
he's this alone.
very low with no relics. Finally, SK decided to make the right call. And we can all send our thanks to Sam for Soccer if you're an SK fan for winning that team fight. I mean, a 3-man Thor dunk right on time, but it's also because Neil hits a big horrific emblem on 3 people and sets Sam up for a big dunk, slows everybody down, also forces them to group on top of Hurwind. That was a really nice initiation from Neil that didn't necessarily involve Last Breath.
He was able to kind of pull in Hurwin there and lock him down just long enough for Sam to come in. So a nice strong fight for them. This right side Phoenix should be back up shortly. They'll help get the Titan topped back off as well. The Phoenix obviously can't regen back to full, but it can get close. And SK can start to feel a bit better about this next fight. Remember, that gold lead is starting to shrink a bit too. More like 6,000 to 7,000 instead of 10,000 like it was before.
And the Phoenix is back up, so Dignitas know that they don't have a whole lot of time. The good news is that Ataraxia still has beads, whereas neither Paul nor Zapman has a relic.
QFred has gone in aggressively, has used the ultimate defensively. Trix Tank finds a push and a pull onto Paul, right into Variety's waiting hands. But in comes Zapman with the recall demons, but it's too late. Hurwin dunks on Paul with the final judgment. Sam isn't able to synergize up with Hurwin. All of their CC has not been chained together properly. Sam does find Hurwin eventually, but it's 2 for 1.
Variety up and over the wall, gonna try and keep this chase going. This is really just because Belair's going where Dig want to go, and that's towards this Phoenix.
Well, they've been able to root him now thanks to QFred. This might be
horrific
a kill here onto Belair's. Ataraxia's damage has been very relevant here in the late game, and suddenly Dignitas has salvaged a really good fight. SK seemed a bit out of sorts in that last engagement.
Definitely bad communication between Sam, Neil, and Belair on that kill onto Hurwind, but that I don't think Neil realized how good of an opportunity they had to pick Cuvo in that fight. He didn't have beats either, and instead of just going for the Last Breath right away, Neil tries to hit him with the Cobra's Kiss, which gives Cuvo enough time to get up and over the wall with that Mystic Rush. I don't think Dignitas could have closed that gap fast enough to help Cuvo had they CC'd him properly in that moment.
He was a bit far forward there, but SK don't quite capitalize. Another fight that slows this game down, but remember, SK are still the defenders right now. Despite how this game went early on, Dignitas were able to find themselves a lead, so this slower pace, this time for SK to farm is all beneficial to the Chaos side here team right now. As long as they're farming, they could still be losing relics and cooldowns that set up Dig.
Now it's going to be another fight where every relic is up except for Ataraxia's beads, because those are the only thing that were up going into that last team fight, which is usually how this happens. But SK very happy with the outcome, I'd say overall, with having their carries have no relics in that fight and still getting Hurwind off the map, getting a couple kills, not losing their Phoenix again. That's overall pretty solid.
50 seconds where SK want this fight, Dignitas might not. They pull Neil in properly, Deathbane allows him to reposition. But the rest of SK were way far back. They did not want that fight just yet. Instead, they're going to see if they can get Dignitas actually onto the FG and softened up a bit.
Don't forget about Sam for Soccer's ultimate, but he's clearing mid-wave. They don't know this is happening quite yet. Now they know.
Pops. Neil Mom wants to move in. There's the boulder to try and secure Supernova. Means that Dignitas get the objective. Final Judgment was used as well, but Sam comes right to Herwind as he has all game long, and Herwind is now low. Belair gets the kill credit. Zapman falls too, but they get variety on that one. SK come out on ahead in this fight. Now Ataraxia is in trouble. Pulled back in for the Deathbane. That's good pill from Trixtank, but Ataraxia is too low. A critical kill comes through for SK as they want to keep surging.
Belair and Sam for Soccer and Paul also going forward. Paul still has beads as they are going to turn their attention back to Trixtank. That stinger goes out. Doesn't land, it doesn't look like. Oh no, it does. Paul still getting pretty weak. He's tanking.
Paul's the one they need to live more than anyone else. He's their sustained damage onto the structures if they can win this fight, but he's just so low. Trixtank knows that's all he needs is for that kill and can't get it. Paul gets the kill. They can head right back.
Yeah, gotta go
take
back,
a moment
man.
to breathe. They can't keep pushing here.
They've got a collective 350 health. I mean, between the three of them. What a fight, though, from SK. And that's exactly the way you want to take that engagement. Look at that team fight recap. Their damage way above, and it's because Dignitas has to extend a lot into getting the Fire Giant itself. They've got to use Excavate from Trix. They've got to use Final Judgment from Herwind. Ataraxia may have used Supernova even in that little corridor. And so SK has this great opportunity to surge forward, and Sam has continually found Herwind in this back line.
Yeah.
And credit to Ataraxia, he has done his job. He has done the damage that you need from your one backliner. It's been my phrase to go to as of late, but if a team wants you dead and you're a carry, you are dying. There's not a lot you can do. It's you have to set your other carry up for success in that moment. And Ataraxia has not dropped that ball. It's just that SK has played so well with their damage dealers and their backline dive. Belair and Sam have really done great work.
Ataraxia could potentially be in trouble here. That's the beads forced out again, and look how fast SK disengaged. They got exactly what they want out of that. And Dig got the FG there. It's only left on Cubo Fred in the back end of this fight, but you can kind of feel it in the air in this game here right now. The tightrope that Dignitas are walking on right now, how close this set is to ending in 3 in favor of an SK Gaming team that, remember, have to win this set if they even want to keep their dreams alive of making it auto-qualifying in that top 6. Even still, they got to hope Splice kind of dropped the ball on the tail end of this split. But if they drop this set here, it is entirely over. You can tell they're playing with that weight.
I think that SK, if I'm an SK player, I'm not expecting to auto-qualify to Worlds at this point. You just need too much help. But at the same time, this is a great measuring stick, good confidence builder for going up against some teams that are pretty strong, honestly, in that placement week bracket. You definitely want to come in hot.
Dignitas going to take this opportunity to surge themselves. SK don't like the fight, so they reposition. This is a bit of an odd one that could potentially be happening here. A fight on the left side of the map where no one really has much that they're looking for right now. SK has to make sure they play this one so carefully as Trixtank gets a pull, but this is just Belair. They pull back in on the right-hand side. Neil Ma forces out the beads from Herwind. That's Ataraxia and Hurry now without beads.
Herwind got that dash off just in time. I don't think Sam was in range to the point where he could have waited to see if he can play the back end of Evade and Punish, because otherwise he would have made a full combo and probably kill Herwind.
Even without those beads, it's Dignitas that are still playing aggressively. Zapman in trouble with Cuba Fred sitting on top of him and left, and now in comes Neil to give him some much-needed backup, but Paul is low as well. Suddenly, Dignitas have been able to get to these carries of SK, despite the way this fight started. Blink in, pulled back in, but Belair found Hurry.
Paul is alive, and I think he's out. He's got to pull Trix into the honey, and that's the right call as the rest of the fight rages on the left.
Yeah, Cuba Fred might now be in a bit of trouble. That's a big supernova, though, from Ataraxia to cut the fight in half. Variety finds one. Trixtank finally gets to Paul, but Belair shuts down Cuba Fred, and Ataraxia is in a world of trouble in the backline. Belair gets himself a double kill as by taking down Ataraxia. It's just Trixtank Variety that are left alive now on Dig.
Again, it's these frontliners from Dignitas that are up and going. Trixtank still here. Just that threat keeps Sam for Soccer off of coming in on Variety.
Variety now in a little bit more trouble as Belair gonna lock him down. But the damage dealers are down for SK. This is not too big of a fight either way without having Paul or Zapman here alive. So Trixtank is able to reposition, as is Variety. But actually, Sanfrechtsoccer goes in aggressively with this Anvil of Dawn. The boulder comes back through too, but Sanfrechtsoccer does put Variety down.
That was so
stun
sick.
keeps Sanfrechtsoccer alive, and Trixtank has to reposition.
Neil Ma is a nut, dude. That Cobra's Kiss right as Trixtank is waiting for Sanfrechtsoccer to come down to prevent that driving strike. Neil has played this game really, really well. Off of struggling early, got first blooded, had some struggles at that point, but man, he has been playing this late game on a god that's really hard to play well late game. Cirquet's support, I think, is weird. What is my role? How can I get my job done? You know, I'm really just there in the early game in order to get a lot of work done and put out a lot of this damage. Really impressive stuff from Neil, I think, in these later stages.
And this game couldn't be closer right now. I know that Dignitas had a big lead for a while, but at this point, that lead is all but evaporated. The biggest difference, really, there's a couple towers in SK's way if they got to make a push to the end, but that's about it. Trixtank is the early target, gets caught in the middle of the driving strike, and is incredibly low, but Supernova and the Hieroglyphic Assault comes through. Final Judgment, not enough this time, as that man gets the kill. Neil Ma moves in with the Horrific Emblem. That sets up for the rest of SK to keep looking for aggression, but they finally slow down.
Blink Horrific Emblem, every support's dream initiation, but it does good work there. I mean, it got beads out from Hurlwind. Problem is that still has Aegis. Final Judgment won't take too long to come back up. 30% CDR in that build for Hurry. 40% if he has a purple pot, which I would be shocked if he didn't.
Pyromancer goes down for SK, a monumental deal 38 minutes into this contest. As Dignitas just lost Trixtank again. And SK has repeatedly made him a focus. I know they've done a good job switching over to trying to hunt down Hurwin in the back of these team fights, but I am a bit surprised at how willing they are to just kind of put some damage into Trixtank even now.
He has a lot of prots, sure, but the double Titan's Bane from Sam and Paul's damage outright with the chin size and the Transcendence and the Odysseus bow, it works, man. A lot of Hercules tankiness comes from that mitigate wounds, and when you're not getting that big heal, you really do feel it. You feel a lot more susceptible.
SK now in control of the Fire Giant pit, pushing beyond. Cubo Friend Sanfrechtsoccer exchanged words in the middle lane, but they're done for now. Instead, Neil Ma trying to see if he can bait Ataraxia into dropping some relics. He cannot, and makes his way back out of there. I do want to say one more time again how much I think Ataraxia's played well this game.
I agree. And top of the player damage for his team. He's been doing his job.
Well, this could be a problem now as Variety and Trixtank could get collapsed on. Zapman is recalling Demon's Final Judgment. Does hit him for a good amount of damage, but this is all about Ataraxia. He gets the Aegis off that makes it for he can make it into the Saffrey, but Bel Air is waiting for him. Supernova means almost nothing this fight. Now Hurwind is in trouble now too. This is disaster for Dig. They lost both their carries.
Just not enough protection under a tier 2 tower at 39 minutes. Should be a Fire Giant now for SK. They might decide that they just want to push for Phoenixes.
Cobra's Kiss forces out the beach from Cubo Fred to make this push even easier for SK. You're right, they're not going back for FG. They're going to try and force down this tier 2. They're being surprisingly patient, waiting on minions, but they might as well.
Belair has TP, so he can come right back at full HP. I wish that we had a stat of relics forced, because Neil Ma has, give or take, 633 this game. I mean, he has gotten every relic from every carry.
It's been a monstrous performance there from him as now SK try the difficult task of sieging into Dignitas. Driving Strike comes out of the Excavate is there as well, but Trixtank starting to melt a bit, stunned by Bel Air. He's been putting in a lot of work on the King Arthur as well, but Trixtank does make it out. And despite the number advantage, this has felt labored from SK. They are struggling to push past the front line.
Cubo still alive, up down to that Mystic Rush, and Variety's found Zapman, but he falls to Paul.
Cubo Fred some trouble now too as Bel Air looking for the kill. Bel Air does get it, but it cost him his life as well. In a 5v3, SK barely get the middle Phoenix. A really good defense from Dig.
Those beefy frontliners, man, just still gave him some trouble. Paul,
that's what they've itemized for. I don't know, man. I don't think that's a good enough fight.
They just, it was an extent, Dignitas' backline in that game, or that fight, was Cubo. That was the only backliner, quote unquote. But he and Trixtank did such a good job of pulling SK's actual frontline out of protection range for Paul and Zap. And Zap is not going to be doing objective damage at this point. It's really all about his player damage, and frankly, he hasn't done that very well yet this game either. So it means that you're really just relying on Paul, and Variety's able to take him out of those Phoenix sieges pretty easily.
Fury goes down for Dig here now, and that does give them a little bit of push power to maybe slow down this siege from SK, who will finally manage to get to the other side of the map and take down a Phoenix But we might be in for a bit of a barn burner here this time, Aggro. 41 minutes, 15 seconds. Dignitas trying hard to just hold on at this point. You said earlier, this might not even be so much about staying in contention for Worlds qualifier, the auto bid. And I think you're right. If you're Dig, this is about just kind of salvaging what's been a rough week for them, man, and proving that they can still hang in there in a tough set.
I mean, they're in danger of falling from what looked like not locked up, but a pretty good shot at 2nd seed to maybe 6th. I mean, they can fall all the way down right now.
That's the difference between playing a qualifier from the lower bracket or facing another SPL team.
Yeah, and that's in a top-end one at that. I mean, it is a big drop that is staring Dignitas in the face right now. This is an important set for them. And they need to win this. I mean, they're down 2-0.
Really won't be getting any other chances to turn this set around, and SK's made it as difficult as they can. Dignitas have done such a good job of really taking Zapman out of this game. He's felt like almost a non-factor this time. They've got to find some kind of way to get this Zhonghui relevant this time because he hasn't done much.
I think Zap needs to find a Soul Reaver somewhere in the build. I mean, look at how much HP Cuvo has available to him. Hurwind has Pythags plus E-Staff. You're itemizing for killing frontliners. Stone of Binding is something that shouldn't be in the inventory at 42 minutes on a Zhonghui. I think he desperately needs some more damage.
It's a little bit too utility from him, and that's putting a lot of burden on Paul here this game to be the damage dealer. He certainly answered. He's just the top in the game, but it feels like there's no need to offset all of that responsibility onto him.
Especially at this point in the game where you need your Zhonghui to be able to threaten the whole team fight by himself. And Zap just hasn't done that quite yet. Probably spent a lot of money on upgrading those relics, probably some purple pots that he's bought. But I think saving, and this is where mages, here I go on my soapbox, are at a disadvantage. Your big impact items are just more expensive than every other class. And so saving for both Elixir of Speed and something like Soul Reaver is a lot harder than saving for Odysseus Bow or Blackthorn Hammer. You know, Runeforge is what Cuvo picked up. That's much cheaper. It is a disadvantage for mages because those items are so impactful.
This dance around the fire giant continues. DJ might be running out of songs at this point as Dignitas have given up most of the positioning around this. They've just kind of moved over to this mid lane fight. It almost feels like the teams are itching for something to do while someone waits to get this party started. Vision control from Dignitas, not too bad over here around the actual fire giant pit itself. I mean, again, like I said, they've moved this fight over to the middle lane. How much vision do you have there?
No lane wards, but Trix Tank a little bit isolated.
This is what they've been fighting for, is trying to find this positioning. Trix Tank gets pulled back in, last breath. Needs no mitigate, needs healing. Trix Tank still alive even now, but finally ends up falling. Sanford Soccer doesn't get much out of this Anvil of Dawn.
Oh, the
wall! But Cuvo Fred walled off perfectly. That spells the end for him, and now it's a very difficult defense for Dig. They don't have Cuvo or Trix Tank to try and hold off SK's wrath.
Looks like someone from SK called end, and then someone else went, hey, remember what happened when we tried to do that in the last game and then ended up getting killed? Didn't hurt us there. Could certainly hurt them this time around, so they go back towards fire, but no Zap, no Bel Air, and Variety's waltzing in.
Yeah, Paul's not doing as much damage to this FG as you might have expected this late in the game. It's been a bit of a slow DPS push for them, but Variety can't steal this by himself. Instead, SK grab the Fire Giant. Everyone has accepted on Dignitas. They're just going to have to defend on Phoenixes. But they are giving a bit of time for Dignitas to respawn in and make a full 5-man defense.
Phoenix still pretty weak, and you've got 25 seconds on Cuvo. Trix will likely be here in time to help affect this Phoenix fight. If SK can get in and out right here, they won't have to worry about Fred, but otherwise, that's got to be a concern.
Belair had to go back to defend this right side Phoenix that was indeed under some stress, but look at how slow SK are playing this. This will indeed be a full defense now from Dignitas. It's so difficult, despite these long timers, for SK to feel comfortable trying to make a push.
I mean, maybe those fights were enough. Yeah, Zapman does make a change, but doesn't get more damage. Instead gets a Mantle of Discord in place of the boots, feeling like if he can stick around long enough, that's been his problem in these fights more than the actual damage numbers he's putting out. It's probably a little bit of both. I don't have a big beef with going Mantle pretty much ever.
It's a good item, isn't it? One of the better passives, or item passives rather, in the game as well.
Nearly saved Trix Tank right there. He got CC immunity, got cleansed from the Mantle right as he got stingered, so he could actually driving strike out.
Yeah, very, very strong. No problems at all with Zapman picking this one up. But SK, I mean, if the 5v3 just now with the Cuba Fred and Trickstank dead, a lot of the control missing for Dignitas wasn't enough for them to feel comfortable pushing in, then I'm not sure what it is they are looking for here at this point. I mean, they've got the Fire Giant now. They're going to have minions coming from every direction with this dedicated push they're doing. They're going to try and get everything they can going in their favor before they push in.
Certainly the weight of closing out a set, I think, looms a little bit heavier than game 2. You know, it's those are, we can lose this and be okay. Not that SK couldn't still win the set if they lose this game, but knowing that you are right on the edge, I think, does strain your decision making a little bit more.
Look how much they're stretching it here. 3 members in left, 2 in right, trying to force Dignitas to make a difficult decision. Neil goes in, but Irwin had the evade and punish. He's able to make it back, no problem.
Trickstank took a lot of poke, though. I mean, that extra power that you get from Enhanced Fire Giant really does impact more than you think. And remember, you don't need minions. Enhanced Fire Giant makes you ignore those backdoor protections. So Neil Ma can tank this up pretty well.
By another minute and a half to try and make this push work. It's a 3-2 split. They have sent the Soul and the Osiris over to the right-hand side. Ataraxia and Variety defending there. Everyone else defending on left. Ataraxia half HP at the same time. A leap in on the left side. Phoenix Sam takes to the sky. Might even try and swap sides that he's defending on. No, he comes down. Forced out the Aegis from Ataraxia and the Supernova.
That's huge, and Final Judgment missed
whiffs.
over here. Left side Phoenix low, Paul gets it.
That's a good boulder, though, that comes in. That's a lot of damage they put in on the Neo. Cubo Fred seals that up, and Hieroglyphic Assault puts in good damage, too. But Zapman finally finds a good recall Demons, and that starts to push Dignitas back into their base. Though SK are not fully healthy right now.
Got to turn and help on Variety. Variety's got no ult. He shouldn't make it out of this. It's a matter of if they can CC him long enough. That wall's still good. They don't have enough damage.
They don't feel like committing there either. And now they actually have a chance to turn around and counter collapse onto Belair. They certainly do. Herwin gets the kill credit there. So left side Phoenix might be down, but yet again, SK can't do it by a large enough margin.
I just think Zapman needs more damage right now. I mean,
Me
he gets
too.
off a whole recall Demons and doesn't get to kill either half-health frontliner. Soul Reaver is the answer here for Zapman. Sell the Pythags, I don't care. It's so much less damage. If you feel like you really need the mantle, it's really the Soda Binding that's got to go more than anything else. Yes, it's more pen, but you can just outright kill them. I don't think that you're going to get a whole lot out of that tiny bit of penetration that Soda Binding provides.
Not 49 minutes into the game, I find myself agreeing. Now it's SK who have to defend without their jungle and solo laner, as Dignitas don't seem nearly as worried about starting a push on the left side. It is a fire minion wave they're trying to push out. That's a lot slower. Neil will be here for this defense, so at least be 4. Look where SK are, way on the right-hand side. I don't know that Dig are going to be expecting for SK to come from here, as Variety takes a ton of damage from Paul. That's the evade and punish for Herwin, and Paul gets dunked on by the Final Judgment, so Sam has to make something happen, but he makes it up to the sky just barely. Herwin in some trouble. Neil Ma finally makes it to him.
Belair's up in 5 seconds. Sam's going to exit as he needs to, but Neil's still in some trouble. Horrific might buy him a little bit of time, but he still has to find a way back to the fountain.
This will be a 4 against 4 defense. Oh, maybe not if Neil ends up dying here. They need him to back. It looks like now he should be able to complete a back in time to make it for this defense. I don't know if Dignitas are going to get anything for this unless they just want a heads-up fight with no real advantage.
They do, because Zapman has no relics still, and that's why they went aggressive, because neither Paul nor Zap had relics to fight with.
Sam for soccer. Aggressive on the Variety. Wall to stun him. Neil dashes in. Variety needs some backup, and it's on its way here finally. I said he needs backup, but this is not much damage. They're putting onto an all-in. Cubo Fred has a loop around to the back where there's a 2-man push from Trickstank, but Zapman starts recalling Demons. Supernova doesn't find very much of this fight. Starting to get a bit scattered if you're on the side of Dig. Trickstank can't stand in the front line for very long, and SK bring him down.
Neil just keeps everybody busy right there from Dignitas. He's in Ataraxia's face. That means Cubo turns to help. That means Variety turns to help. And Trix is kind of left on his own. Really nice play from Neil Ma, who continues to impress with this late game. And Zap, instead of going with different itemization, picks up a 3K, probably more damage outright. And I agree with his assessment, a 3K defense pot, and I might have lost my gourd right here, but he at least goes with the right direction. Maybe you get more damage out of Soul Reaver because of the passive procs, but probably not. 3K probably worth more. No, there's no way it's less damage. 3K is definitely the route.
There you go, Zapman. able to make his way to the right answer this time. Erendite down there for Neil, that's worth mentioning as well. A bit of an odd, out of odds, the right word here, but not something we see very often. As Fire Giant will belong to SK this time. Dignitas not really trying to take a seat at this table in particular. We've already seen these Phoenix defenses work several times for Dignitas so far. No reason why they shouldn't believe they can make another one happen here.
This is a good spot, though, I think. I mean, 3K pot for Zapman might be a game winner. It really feels like it's going to make that much of a difference because there have been so many fights where it's 3 for 2 or 3 for 3, and it's the frontliners that are left alive, and then they just don't have enough damage to chew through it. 3K might be the difference in that. I like SK's odds. Does Paul also have a 3K pot already ticking? Maybe he had one earlier and I missed it because he still has his boots. And there's no way you need boots at 50. Like there's no way he hasn't accumulated enough gold at this stage to have gotten rid of that. Yeah, he got a 3K defense pot a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, we can't tell how much time is left on that, but that's a big deal.
Should make it much, much harder for Paul to be taken down here at this point. They'll be making another push on this left side, Phoenix, the weakened one. Remember, they did a 3-2 split, but on complete opposite sides. We don't see that quite as often as the 3-2 split in like mid and a side lane, and I think that it did work. It made it so much harder for Dig to rotate over. They gave them 2 sort of sanctioned fights.
Irwin might just try and find an ult through the wall, but at this point, because of enhanced fire, you get so much extra sustain, it's not as effective as it was earlier.
Forced the evade and punish out early from Irwin, but he does hold on to the relics. This time he doesn't. Those are the beats forced out after the blink in the last breath, but Cubo Fred is dunking on Paul. He actually gets the kill, but it costs him his life. Zapman had the recall demons. Sam is rotated over.
Wall.
Another good wall. Hurwind can't get the final judgment off this time. I think he does, but it just isn't enough damage. Supernova comes through as well. Dignitas barely clinging on.
Zapman in some trouble. Mantle helps him out, but it's a
Anorexia goes
triple kill for Neil Ma.
That's it.
And SK Gaming gonna win it off the back of the support triple.
And this is a brutal set now for Team Dignitas. 53 minutes that they fought to try and cling on to their set lives this time, but it will not be enough. A loss to Obey, a loss to SK in sets where they were favored. With Worlds looming on the horizon, they got some work to do.
That one hurts, man. That definitely hurts for Dignitas. They're definitely going to the World Championships. I mean, mathematically now, that might drop them to the point where, oh no, they are clinched. They're definitely clinched. They've had enough games. I was just thinking of the number of wins they've had, but they've played enough to where they'll definitely be there. But you're right. They've got to try and get something going because this has just not been a good week for them.
No, this has not been the look. I mean, if we're being honest, Dignitas are not just a team that qualified in the World back in Phase 1 and are limping in. They had winning Worlds aspirations coming into this event, man.
Agreed.
I would say that is how strong this team is. And that's why it's such a big deal that they're dropping games to Obey, dropping games to SK. Not that these teams are bad, but if you're going to try and beat Renegades, who no one's been able to beat, then you at least got to be able to get it done in one set here.
I mean, I'm thinking about moving Hurwin back to mid, putting Anorexia back in long lane.
Yeah.
You've got to change something. I still think that we didn't see the best version of Dignitas here this week, but that's about, can we get back to that point? You know, the mental aspect of the game is so important, and this is where that team synergy's got to come together. These guys, just as people, have to work together a little bit better than they have, and it's gonna be a tall task because the rest of the SPL, I feel like that top end, the rivals, the Renegades of the world, are pulling away pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And Dignitas now feels like they're a part of that second pack that's got to try and catch up.
You're not going to get a lot of chances if you want to try and take down the top team, so Dig have got to start cleaning this up as we move into the back half of Phase number 2. We'll get a chance to hear from SK, though, our winners, and break it down further on the desk on the back side of this break.
The SMITE Pro League is brought to you by Titan Forge Games, the developers of SMITE.
Welcome back to the desk of the SMITE Pro League. That team over my shoulder, Dignitas. We're up against SK today, and we've just got done with their set 3-0 to SK Gaming. I am so shocked by this, Tolly. I thought this might have been close. Dig have been playing a little bit worse for wear lately, going 5 games against Obey, but 3-0 against SK. Did not see this coming.
Did not see this coming at all. Dignitas dropping to Obey yesterday, and then now 0-3 up against SK Gaming. Sometimes you live by the Hercules pick, or you die by the Hercules pick. Trickstank first picking it did not work for Dignitas. The Amusin combat of SK heavily countering that pick.
And I will say that Circuit play did come up big for Neil Marr. Lots of good individual plays to support his team on a Circuit. But not only that, right at the tail end, he got a triple kill, which really did assist. Sure, he got the last hit of those, but it was about the last breath. Long game, though, Tully. Long game. 50-minute plus. It was a real scrappy battle between these two. Back and forth. The back line was just being shredded on both sides of the field.
Because of how aggressive both teams' front line was. On one side for SK, it was the Thor, Circuit, and King Arthur. For Dignitas, it's Robin, Hercules, and the going forward, it was the, what was it, the King Arthur? No, the Osiris, rather, for Variety. Both of these teams really preferring the Osiris, and I'd like the idea from Variety to pick this away, taking it away from the likes of Belair. It just wasn't really enough in the late game.
I tell you, this is starting to give me like chills of last year's SK Gaming, as in this trifecta squad that went to the World Championships. This is kind of where Sam for Soccer and Paul started to make their name along with the rest of this team. It's the first time I've really seen them step up in a while here.
It was, honestly, a great performance from the backline of SK. A smart decision from Paul to pick up the 3K defensive potion. We don't see that very often on the Musin Ka, but that's what kind of drew out his life a little bit longer, surviving just not enough time, but still gets the window to get the multiple kills on the left side Phoenix Siege.
And this long fight that you're seeing here, just keep an eye on what's happening. Who's first to die? Horrywin focused. Then SK focused towards Ataraxia. All the while, you've got Variety trying to deal with Zapman and keep him out of the play.
Yeah.
It was about the carries running as fast as they can, and who would live longer in terms of attacks.
More execution driven for the likes of the Hercules for Trickstank, whereas Belair on King Arthur was just spamming away abilities. Heroin was finally pinned against the wall, and without that long range artillery, it was very easy for SK to finally hit the last nail in the coffin.
And the walls from Sam for Soccer on that Thor were so impactful throughout the game. So many avenues cut off that really did twist that map up. Fantastic performance from SK, but Dignitas, this has been a hell of a terrible week for them.
They definitely need to figure something out. Despite them automatically qualifying with their 10 victories towards Hi-Rez Expo, if they keep having performances like this, once they get there, they can fall in the first round.
That's a very good point there. They have qualified, so even though these games still matter for other teams, including SK, who still are on track to still potentially qualify for the World Championships ahead of Splice directly, we will get to see how this plays out with Dignitas going forward. 2 losses in a row, not a good look. 2 lower-end teams as well. Not a good situation for them to be in. We'll see how that works out for Dig, but for now it's all about SK and their performance today. They're standing by for an interview to talk about that victory.
I got Zapman and Neil Ma here. Yep, we're about to get started. First off, congratulations on the win. And the reason I think this is such a big win for you guys is that everyone on the team stepped up at different points in this set. What do you think it was that had you all clicking together so well in this set?
You can take it. I think the biggest thing is comms, and also our scrims. We are working on a lot of things that we're weak on, aka comms, consistency, team fights, what our jobs are. And I think every week we're getting a little bit better at doing that. I think we pulled the game off of Renegades and Splice, so we're really happy about that. And getting 3-0 here really just vindicates our hard work that we've been putting.
I mean, yesterday Dignitas struggled pretty well against Obey. What did you see from that set that helped you today? It felt like your early game, you went back to the kind of what you started the year with, which was a lot of early game pressure.
Well, we just I looked mostly at their drafts when we were preparing. We were just looking at what they were playing and just kind of thinking about what we could get, and just kind of reassessing our values on our draft as well, and just being a little bit more clear-minded. Because I think it was kind of hard to look at their play yesterday. You could easily just say, oh, they might have just had a bad day, write that off. They could show up and easily be the Dig everyone knows today. I think they are slumping a little bit, but I think they still will be a really good team come Worlds.
Well, what about this third game? Because game 1, you guys came in and were able to grab that one pretty quickly. Game 2 was a bit closer, but this game dragged on and on. What was causing you all so much trouble here in this game, and how do you feel like you all eventually were able to overcome it?
I think it was the mid game. Their mid game spike with Osiris and Hercules was really strong. I went kind of an awkward build with Stone and Binding. I think my Zonkui is on par with my Hebo, but I'm not too sure about that. Yeah. We'll see. And just the mid game, they hit us hard in the mid game. They got a lead, they got some objectives, and it was an uphill climb after that.
That one bad team fight we had around mids.
Yeah.
And we just played a team fight really bad. They killed us. They took back the lead. Herc was really underleveled, and then they put him ahead of me, so that really helped him, because if he would have been behind any longer, it would have been a really tough game for him.
Now, you guys, you aren't guaranteed to make it to Worlds quite yet. You're still able to, potentially, but are you focused on trying to win all these games and maybe auto-qualify, knowing that you need some help, or are you more focused on just improving in time for placements?
Just improving, I think. Like, obviously you want to win every game, but at the end of the day, just being as good as you can be for Worlds is more important. If we have to play through the qualifiers, so be it. If you're not going to make it through the qualifiers, you're not going to win anyway. So if you can just have good form going into however you might have to qualify, automatic or otherwise, just about being there and being at Worlds, being confident and being a solid team, have as few weaknesses as we can. So that's what we're looking forward to, just trying to perfect our craft and be strong come Worlds.
Qualifiers week went pretty well for you guys last year, right? So certainly not too worried.
It did.
Yeah, hey. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Neither, man.
Oh, never mind. Sorry, forgot about that one. Desk, take it back real quick. Good stuff, guys.
All right. Next man. So much Ryan and Finch there, and as you can see, it did go okay for them. We'll see how it goes this time round. A great performance from SK today, though, and it's good to see they're in high spirits and preparing to still potentially be in the placements. Here's a look at the standings, though. As you can see at the moment, things are almost pretty much locked in. There's some debate over Splice and SK, which we'll get to towards the end. But next week means there's still more to play for. Seeding still matters here.
It definitely does. That first and second seed will face off against the first and second team that comes through those placements.
And as you can see, next week, a shorter week in the SPL for week 10. Rival versus LG will be the only game on Friday. However, LG and Pittsburgh Knights, big set there to see how the Knights do with their new mid laner and solo laner, Deathwalker mid. Row in the solo lane, Zero's off the team. Big challenge there.
That is going to be an interesting challenge, though. But it is against LG, a lesser team, so we'll see how they fare against that one.
And, of course, we'll see most of these teams at the World Championships. You guys can come along, too. Just a reminder, tickets are on sale now. Make sure you get them picked up so you can come and visit us all, the pros, the players, the fans, the developers behind the scenes as well. It's a very inclusive sort of event where you get to really mix with everyone and enjoy all the fun from SMITE. But that's all the joy and fun from SMITE we're giving you today. Go home this weekend and play some yourself. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all bright and early on Monday for some SMITE Console League action. See you then.
We're here live from Atlanta. The players are here. The stage is set. Let's get down for esports!
This is where we also talk about the new stuff that we've got coming out for you all.
HRX is literally my favorite time of year. It truly isn't close. This is what I live for.
If that's second place, I can't wait to see what first place is.
It is HRX.
I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression is all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone and progression is all that I